Marvel, Fishing in the Skies. Starting with the Ghost Swordsman Legacy. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 301. Although these missiles are small, their power is not bad at all. How could the Green Goblin dare to resist them? His metal exoskeleton has only so much defensive power, and he doesn't have Tony's protective shield. If he is hit by these missiles, even if he doesn't die, he will be skinned. The Green Goblin immediately controlled the machine gun of the aircraft and bombarded the missiles. He tried to blow them up in midair, but the missiles were moving very coquettishly. There were so many missiles, but only one was scrapped, and the rest were still bombarding the Green Goblin. But at this moment, a loud horn sounded suddenly from below. A large truck was driving fast on the road. The horn sound came from the large truck. The Green Goblin's eyes lit up immediately. But Tony frowned. He thought to himself that it was not good. The Green Goblin dived and dodged several missiles. He landed directly on the cargo box of the truck, opened his arms, and looked at Tony proudly as if he was welcoming death. Chapter 169. Despicable and Shameless. Venom appears? Fuck. At %. The truck driver rolled down the window and yelled at the outside. Then he saw a scene that he would never forget in his life. 5 or 6 missiles with flames fell from the sky and blasted towards his truck. And floating in the sky was his idol, Tony Stark, Iron Man. As a loyal fan of Iron Man, he was too familiar with this kind of Iron Man signature missile. There were countless data emperors in the forum who analyzed the power of the missiles clearly. So the moment the truck driver saw the missiles, he seemed to see that he was too cute. However, at this moment, the missiles suddenly deviated from the track and exploded on both sides of the road. Boom boom boom, accompanied by several balls of fire rising. The powerful impact caused the truck to shake. The Green Goblin suddenly raised his arm and punched a big hole in the top of the truck. Ha ha ha, Tony Stark, you can't bear to blow it up. I'll help you blow it up. The Green Goblin smiled evilly, and a pumpkin bomb appeared in his hand. Then the guy threw the pumpkin bomb directly into the box through the big hole. After doing all this, the Green Goblin didn't even look back, and directly started the Batwing aircraft and flew towards the sky. What a despicable guy. Tony's teeth were almost broken, but he really couldn't do nothing to help. There was no way. This is the difference between superheroes and supervillains. The bottom line of both sides is different, so it is destined that superheroes will suffer. Even if they are stronger than the other party, they will still be played around by others. Tony didn't care about the Green Goblin anymore. He rushed straight to the position of the truck driver. After pulling the driver out of the car, several thrusters flew out from behind. They were directly attached to the side of the truck and pushed it into the no man's land on the road. If the truck exploded in the middle of the road, who knows how much trouble it would cause. Boom boom. Just as the truck was pushed out of the road by the thrusters, a violent explosion occurred, and flames shot up into the sky. The truck driver looked at the burning truck. His eyes were dull for a while, and he couldn't help but mutter, 15 years. I still have 15 years of loans. As he spoke, the truck driver couldn't help it anymore, and burst into tears. It was really sad to hear and see the tears, but Tony only felt a vein on his forehead beating wildly. Don't cry. Go to Stark Industries to find Ms. Potts tomorrow. I'll give you a new one, and now you go to the roadside and wait for rescue. Tony put the truck driver on the ground, and drove the thrusters with all his strength. Chasing the Green Goblin again, he swore in his heart that he must beat the Green Goblin so hard that even his mother wouldn't recognize him! The truck driver looked at the back of his idol leaving. Don't mention the complicated taste in his heart. However, at this moment, another familiar figure wandered by. Who else could it be if it wasn't the little spider who was tracking hard? The little spider felt bitter. The desire to fly in his heart was unprecedented. There was no way. He couldn't give up. If Tony was allowed to fight Norman Osborn alone, Tony might kill him. Spider-Man roamed faster. In order to catch up with the opponent more quickly, Spider-Man rushed into a jungle. Suddenly, Spider-Man noticed a little girl lying on the ground in the jungle. The girl's body was covered with black meridians, especially her big eyes, which were only black and without white. Spider-Man rushed over, checking the little girl's condition. The result was obvious. The little girl had died for a long time, and her body was stiff. What a poor child. Spider-Man looked at the little girl and couldn't help but sigh. Suddenly, the spider sense started automatically. Spider-Man vaguely felt that there seemed to be something in the little girl's body. It was very likely the culprit of her death. Just as Spider-Man was thinking about it, suddenly, a ball of black gelatinous substance flew out of the little girl's body and rushed towards Spider-Man. However, with the help of spider sense, Spider-Man dodged the ball of gelatinous substance by turning sideways. But who would have thought that the black gelatinous substance would fly out dozens of tentacles in the air and instantly stick to Spider-Man's battlesuit? For a moment, Spider-Man felt a chill on his back, and then something strange seemed to merge into his body. Spider-Man thought to himself that it was not good. However, before he could react, he found that the battlesuit on his arm began to turn black. Then this black color spread all over his body, and soon he completely repaired his broken fighting spirit. Since Jarvis was not with Spider-Man, Spider-Man himself did not know what happened. He just felt a kind of joy from the bottom of his heart. This joy was indescribable, but Spider-Man felt unprecedented relief. It was as if he had been standing for a lifetime and suddenly sat down. Suddenly, Spider-Man felt something in his heart. He suddenly jumped up and rushed out dozens of meters in an instant. After landing, he instantly smashed a hole of dozens of centimeters. Spider-Man was completely stunned. His speed and strength just now were much stronger than before. Basically, it can be roughly estimated that his current speed and strength have increased by more than 50%. Could this be the opportunity that Brother Kin mentioned in the novel? Spider-Man's eyes lit up as he looked at his black spider suit. But he didn't notice that he had forgotten the body of the little girl lying in the woods. Chapter 302. Pepper didn't like the feeling of being protected. She also wanted to fight alongside Tony and share his worries. Suddenly, Pepper thought of Kinlawo in her mind. If that man, there should be a way to make himself stronger. What Spider-Man and Iron Man? They are just garbage. Trash. A bunch of damn bugs. The Green Goblin laughed wildly in the air, his twisted face full of complacency. However, the Green Goblin didn't know the law of smoke without injury. As the smoke dissipated, the scene in front of him made the Green Goblin's complacent face freeze instantly, replaced by gnashing teeth. He looked like he wanted to eat people. Chapter 168. Escape in a panic. Beware of the consequences of throwing rats at weapons. The smoke dissipated. Tony and Spider-Man stood in front and behind. There was a thin blue energy shield around them. It was seen that within the range covered by the energy shield, not to mention people, even the grass was not affected by the explosion. Since the upgrade of the arc reactor, Tony has also carried out a wave of transformation and upgrades on the life-saving energy shield. Not only did the energy required decrease, but also the release speed and defense ability were increased several times, so blocking the explosion of 2 pumpkin bombs was not a problem at all. Damn Tony Stark, I think you should not be called Iron Man, but Turtle Bastard. The Green Goblin roared in exasperation, then controlled the aircraft and turned to run. Although the Green Goblin was crazy, he was not a fool. Whether it was Tony or Spider-Man, any one of them would be enough for him. If the two of them attacked together, he could still hold on for a short time by being mean and shameless. After a little longer, he would definitely lose. It can be seen from the state of both sides. Except for the damage to the battlesuit caused by being too reckless at the beginning, Spider-Man did not suffer any more injuries. At most, there were a few bruises. Tony was even more needless to say, he just consumed a little energy. On the other hand, the Green Goblin's metal exoskeleton had been damaged by more than 30%. There were also many injuries on his body, and even 7 or 8 teeth flew away. Now there was air leaking from his mouth when he smiled. He had to admit that he had seriously underestimated the strength of Tony and Spider-Man. Damn bastard, do you think you can run away? Tony gritted his teeth and removed the protective shield, started the thrusters, and flew towards the Green Goblin. Mr. Stark, be careful. At this time, Spider-Man noticed a green ball of light flying down from the sky and immediately shouted loudly. Tony was shocked when he saw this. He raised his palm cannon and fired. Bang! The palm cannon hit the green ball of light, but there was no explosion. Before Tony and Spider-Man could come to their senses, a dazzling green light suddenly appeared. In an instant, the entire space was reflected in a dazzling green light, and there was also a harsh sound. This light was extremely dazzling. If Tony hadn't had a mask to block it, he would have been temporarily blinded at best, and even permanent blindness was not impossible. When Spider-Man faced such dangerous situations, his spider reaction always worked. The moment the strong light came on, his eyes were already closed. The Green Goblin didn't use a pumpkin bomb, but a special stun bomb. "Damn green bastard, I must take care of you." Tony gritted his teeth and cursed. After being fooled by such a guy twice, Tony's self-esteem was instantly unbearable. The thrusters were fully activated and rushed towards the direction where the Green Goblin disappeared. Only Spider-Man was left there, rubbing his ears in different ways. The special stun bomb was still very effective. Just now, Spider-Man only blocked his eyes, but did not have time to cover his ears. Now Spider-Man only felt his ears buzzing and his head was dizzy. Fortunately, Spider-Man was physically strong. It took less than half a minute to ease up. But there was no longer any figure of Tony and the Green Goblin in front of him. "OMG!" Spider-Man exclaimed, and hurriedly used the positioning of the battlesuit to explore the location of Tony and the others. Fortunately, although the battlesuit was severely broken, the positioning function was not affected. Soon Spider-Man locked the Green Goblin's location and immediately chased him out. Only this piece of messy land was left, above the sky. The Green Goblin kept kneading his deformed cheeks. At the same time, he rushed towards the location of the military. It was rare for him to be completely released. Now he was full of anger. The Green Goblin was naturally unwilling to go back in such a miserable state. Since Iron Man couldn't solve it, he would first solve the military scumbags. There were many days to come, and he could plan and play slowly. The Green Goblin's face showed an evil smile again, but soon he couldn't smile anymore, because he saw from the corner of his eye that a familiar figure was approaching him quickly not far away. "Damn, how can he be so fast?" The Green Goblin cursed secretly and immediately increased the speed of the aircraft. But the speed of this Batwing aircraft was limited, and it was more than one level lower than Tony's battlesuit. The distance between the two sides was still closing rapidly. Bang! A palm cannon was fired from Tony's hand and rushed straight to the Green Goblin in front. However, the Green Goblin seemed to have expected Tony to attack him. So at the moment the palm cannon was fired, the Green Goblin immediately slowed down and began to fly at a low altitude. Tony didn't even think that he could kill the opponent with a palm cannon. He just wanted the opponent to slow down. Now that the goal has been achieved, the flames of the thrusters have become stronger again, and Tony's speed has skyrocketed instantly. As one side grows stronger, the other side grows weaker. The distance between the two sides has shortened to more than 50 meters. "Tony Stark, the lingering ghost, you die!" The Green Goblin roared and slapped his wrist fiercely. Suddenly, a gun barrel stood up in the middle of the Batwing aircraft. Da. Dense bullets gushed out of the barrel and rushed straight towards Tony. Seeing this, Tony's face under the mask showed a sneer. The familiar blue light shield enveloped Tony's whole body again. Those bullets fell on Tony's body except for splashing some sparks, and there was no other effect. It couldn't stop Tony at all. And Tony was not a person who would just take a beating without fighting back. The steel battlesuit on his shoulders rose slightly, and 7 or 8 small missiles flew out quickly, bombarding the Green Goblin from all directions. Chapter 303. However, the pumpkin bomb flew straight to the villa. Seeing this, Spider-Man quickly shot out Spider Silk, stuck it on the pumpkin bomb, and threw it towards the open space on the other side. Dee-dee-dee-dee-boom. With a piercing chirping sound, the pumpkin bomb exploded directly, and a burst of fire emerged. The huge power set off a wave of air. Chapter 167. Mixed doubles. Smoke but no injury. Tony felt the power of the pumpkin bomb. His brows couldn't help but frown slightly. The power of this explosion was not what he thought. It seemed to be much smaller, but such power was already good. It was much stronger than his palm cannon. "Spider-Man, you are really in the way. If you don't dare to fight me, can't you let Tony Stark and I have a good fight?" The Green Goblin looked at Spider-Man and said in a yin-yang tone, and the sarcasm in his words was self-evident. However, Spider-Man didn't care about the Green Goblin's words at all. Just kidding. From childhood to adulthood, Spider-Man didn't know how much ridicule he had endured. Spider-Man could completely ignore the Green Goblin's little taunt and didn't take it to heart. "Mr. Stark, he is Norman Osborn. I don't know what happened to make him like this. If possible, can you please not kill him? After all, he is Harry's father." Spider-Man looked at Tony beside him and said with a bit of pleading in his words. Tony couldn't help rolling his eyes when he heard it. "Spider-Man, do you think I am Kinlawo? I dare not guarantee that I can defeat him while guaranteeing his life. Now what you have to do is to go all out and subdue him with me. Otherwise, who knows how much trouble you will cause." The Green Goblin laughed and said, "It's really ugly. Are you going to bully the minority with the majority? This is not what a righteous person should do." Originally, the Green Goblin thought that his words would make Spider-Man and Tony have some concerns. At least when they joined forces, they would feel guilty as decent people. In that case, there would be too much room for operation. However, it turned out that he thought too much. Spider-Man and Tony started almost at the same time and rushed towards the Green Goblin. Palm cannons and spider silk blocked his retreat on the left and right. "Damn it, are you still superheroes?" The Green Goblin was surprised and cursed loudly, slapping the Batwing aircraft. 6 missiles shot out and attacked Tony and Spider-Man. HMPH, there is no point in talking nonsense with a guy like you. I just want to give you a good beating now. Tony snorted coldly, and more than 10 missiles flew out from behind the armor. Boom boom boom. Continuous explosions sounded. The sky was suddenly covered with fire and smoke. Soon 6 or 7 of Tony's missiles emerged from the smoke and flew straight towards the Green Goblin. In terms of weapon manufacturing, even Norman Osborn received support from the military. Compared with Tony, he is still more than one level behind. "Damn it," the Green Goblin cursed loudly. The feeling of being defeated by the same ability is quite uncomfortable. Green Goblin flipped his hand and threw out 3 pumpkin bombs. Boom. The violent explosion directly destroyed the remaining missiles. Bang. However, at this moment, a palm cannon burst out of smoke and hit Norman Osborn's exoskeleton directly. Instantly blasted Green Goblin away. However, with the exoskeleton device and the blessing of Green Goblin serum, Green Goblin only suffered some minor injuries from this palm cannon, but the metal exoskeleton was broken, revealing the Green Goblin's strong abdominal muscles. After rolling on the ground 3 times, Green Goblin quickly stood up, and Spider-Man's attack also arrived at this moment. I saw Spider-Man hit Green Goblin's head heavily with a punch. Instantly, Green Goblin and his Green Goblin mask were knocked out. Puff. Green Goblin spurted out a mouthful of old blood, along with a few yellow teeth. OMG. After seeing the true appearance of Norman Osborn at this time, Spider-Man couldn't help but exclaimed, "That extremely distorted face." It was not much better than the Green Goblin's mask. It was even more bizarre and terrifying. "Damn it," the Green Goblin roared angrily, took out 2 pumpkin bombs, and rushed towards Spider-Man with a posture of dying together. Spider-Man had never seen such a scene before. Coupled with the Green Goblin's hideous and terrifying face, he was frightened and at a loss. Fortunately, the spider reaction helped. The body involuntarily shot out spider silk, quickly pulling away from the Green Goblin. However, the Green Goblin's explosive power was also quite strong. He rushed over and hugged Spider-Man's legs. The 2 of them were hanging in the air like a swing. "Damn it." Tony rushed forward to help when he saw this. He didn't want to watch Spider-Man and that disgusting guy die together. However, Tony's reaction was exactly what the Green Goblin wanted. He saw Tony approaching quickly from the corner of his eye. The Green Goblin's already twisted mouth corners rose again, just as Tony approached. Whoosh! Suddenly, there was a sound of air breaking behind him. Jarvis detected the Green Goblin's Batwing aircraft, which was flying quickly towards his back. The blades of the Batwings on the aircraft flashed with cold light. According to the impact of the aircraft and the sharpness of the Batwings, it is very likely to give Tony a chill. Even if it can be blocked, the armor will inevitably suffer some damage. Jarvis quickly created a dodging and rescue plan for Tony. Tony used the thrusters to drift horizontally in midair. He narrowly avoided the attack of the Batwing aircraft. At the same time, Tony increased his thrusters and rushed to the front of the Green Goblin almost at the same time as the Batwing aircraft. Beep, beep, beep tilde times 2 at the same time. The two pumpkin bombs sounded a piercing alarm at the same time. The Green Goblin suddenly raised the pumpkin bomb upwards, and at the same time let go of Spider-Man's hand, grabbed the Batwing aircraft, and flew towards the sky. Boom, boom. 2 consecutive violent explosions sounded. Dazzling flames and smoke spread instantly. Pepper, who was watching the battle through Jarvis in the safe house of the villa, clenched her fists at this moment. She was definitely worried, but more of it was trust. She didn't believe that Tony would be solved by that damn Norman Osborn. It was just that this feeling of powerlessness made Pepper feel very uncomfortable, after experiencing the whiplash and other things. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 304, Bang! Suddenly, a figure jumped out from the grass of the villa and kicked the Green Goblin directly. The Green Goblin was kicked out of the aircraft. Even the metal bones on his body had a certain degree of cracks. The one who kicked was none other than Spider-Man, who was 1 step slower than the Green Goblin. There was no way. In terms of speed, Spider-Man, who used a swing to move forward, was still much slower than the aircraft. So the Green Goblin came from behind and arrived at Tony's villa first. At this time, Spider-Man was in a very bad state. His body was charred and damaged. Even his mask was 3/4 gone. This was with the help of Spider-Sense. Otherwise, he would have died now. Chapter 166, A New Battlesuit with Too Many Concerns and Troubles. Spider-Man is still too young. After he realized the danger contained in the pumpkin bomb, he rushed over with passion. He tried to knock the super pumpkin bomb out before it exploded. As a result, before he could take 2 steps, the super pumpkin bomb exploded. Fortunately, he had the spider sense to take emergency shelter. He was not hit by the frontal explosion. However, he was still hit by the residual force. He was not hurt, but his suit was seriously broken. The Green Goblin stood up, holding his lower back. When he saw the face under Spider-Man's damaged mask, his pupils couldn't help but shrink. I knew that the people around that man were not simple. It turns out that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. What a strong power. My back is about to be kicked off. The Green Goblin laughed evilly and stared at Spider-Man, like a hunter seeing his prey. But Spider-Man couldn't help but clench his fists at this time. Even though the other party was wearing a mask, he could still be sure the man in front of him was the elegant Norman Osborn. Thinking of fighting against his former idol. Don't mention how Spider-Man felt, not to mention that he was the father of his best friend. Due to various reasons, Spider-Man's fighting spirit was greatly reduced. Spider-Man, let me see your strength again, the Green Goblin said as he rushed towards Spider-Man. 2 sharp blades popped out from his fists wrapped in metal skeletons. Under the moonlight, they flashed coldly. The Green Goblin's fist blade went straight to Spider-Man's eyes. If this hit was solid, Spider-Man might have to change his career to sword practice in the future. Fortunately, with the blessing of spider reflexes, at the critical moment, Spider-Man dodged the Green Goblin's fist blade, but he was still cut on the cheek by the sharp blade, and blood flowed out. Seeing that he couldn't hit him, the Green Goblin raised his leg and kicked Spider-Man in the abdomen, kicking him out. Logically speaking, Spider-Man's strength is definitely above the Green Goblin. However, due to various factors, Spider-Man couldn't exert his full strength at all. He had no way to hit his idol, the father of his best brother. After a few rounds, Spider-Man was directly at a disadvantage and could only be forced to parry. Even if he fought back, he could only repel him. He couldn't do anything heavy. On the other hand, the Green Goblin didn't care about anything. It was good enough that he didn't attack Harry Osborn, so how could he care about Harry's friends? What does Norman Osborn's concerns have to do with him? The Green Goblin, above the sky. Kinlaw shook his head helplessly as he looked at the little spider who was struggling to deal with it. Sometimes he really hoped that the little spider would turn evil. At least he wouldn't be so suffocated when watching him fight. If there is a chance in the future, He will have to arrange something like venom to stimulate negative emotions for the little spider. After thinking about it, Kinluo looked at Tony's mansion, and with one hand, a stream of energy flew out, directly punching a palm-sized hole in the defensive steel plate. Now that his godson has been abused by others, the godfather can't be a coward. Tony and Pepper in the villa have just put on their clothes, and Jarvis's mechanical arm began to help Tony wear the iron armor, because the previous armor was destroyed. So this armor was just made, and Tony has not yet been in actual combat. There is no special setting for wearing it, so it's not like the previous armor that can be done with a box and a button. Jarvis's assistance is needed. There is no way, who made the situation urgent, otherwise Tony would definitely not wear such armor. Duank-rack, the sound of metal clashing rang out, followed by the sound of glass shattering. Sir, the defense steel plate has been attacked by an unknown attack and has been pierced. The damage has reached 62%. Jarvis's prompt sounded. Tony was a little anxious. If it was him, it would not be a big deal, but Pepper is still in the villa, and he doesn't want Pepper to be hurt. What is the situation outside now? Is the attacker ready to attack again? Tony installed the armor on his hips, but due to the large impact, his face was distorted and he kept sucking in cold air. The hatred for the attacker in his heart increased by one level. Mr. Peter is currently fighting with the attacker, but the battle situation is not very optimistic. Mr. Peter seems to be worried about something and is currently at a disadvantage. Jarvis' voice rang. Tony and Pepper were both stunned. A trace of warmth rose in his heart. Tony never thought that after learning that he was in danger, Spider-Man would rush over and fight with the attacker. Asshole, why don't you go find Kinluo, that idiot, and do it yourself? Does the great Tony Stark need your help? You acted on your own again, which is really worrying. Even if Tony's heart was warm, his words changed as soon as he spoke. But his body was very honest, and he ignored the impact of wearing the armor and started to wear it at full speed. Pepper was really angry and funny when she saw this. The panic just now disappeared without a trace. She took Tony's helmet from the side and put it directly on Tony's head. Stop talking nonsense. If Peter has any problems, you will see it. Tony didn't even have the chance to roll his eyes. He was pushed out by Pepper directly. After rushing out of the villa, Tony saw the Green Goblin fighting with Spider-Man at a glance. Asshole, I don't know who gave you the courage to provoke the great Tony Stark. Now get ready to accept my anger, Tony shouted in a second-year voice. He raised his hand and fired a palm cannon. It was unknown whether it was because he was not used to the new armor or because Tony was too concerned about Spider-Man. Anyway, the cannon was quite off target and exploded 5 meters away from the Green Goblin. Boom. With a loud noise, a deep pit with a diameter of more than 2 meters appeared in front of the Green Goblin. The Green Goblin was so scared that he quickly kicked away the Spider-Man that was entangled with him. Then he did a backflip and jumped onto the flying skateboard. Hee Tony Stark, you finally came out of your turtle shell. After a strange laugh, the Green Goblin raised his hand and threw a pumpkin bomb. Although Tony didn't know what it was, Jarvis knew and immediately reminded Tony to dodge. The thrusters started, and Tony took off directly, avoiding the pumpkin bomb. Chapter 305. Since he is here, he must change some things that he doesn't like. It's easy to get rid of the Green Goblin personality in Norman Osborn, but it's also troublesome. First of all, the Green Goblin personality is different from the inner demon. The Shushan heart cleansing mantra is not very effective. At most it can only suppress it for a short time. If you want to completely eliminate the Green Goblin personality, the first thing to consider is the soul. The ghosts are good at the power of the soul, but those guys are more brutal than each other. It is almost impossible to let them devour the Green Goblin personality without hurting Norman Osborn. The same is true for Ghost Rider Johnny. He has not yet completely mastered the power of the Spirit of Vengeance. Not to mention that the Fire of Judgment doesn't care about good or evil personalities. As long as it is evil, it will be burned directly. Chapter 165. Tony slaps his face and the mansion is attacked. The power of ghosts is not good. The power of the mind is also somewhat unstable. The Shushan secret technique only treats the symptoms but not the root cause. Needless to say, the power of Berserker and Sword Saint, these two powers are almost of no special help to the soul. If your own power is not good, it is even more nonsense to use external aid. Spider-Man May Parker and Tony are not good at soul-related matters at all. Ghost Rider said it before, he is not as good as Kinwo. He is not very reliable, and the external aid is not good enough. It is really a bit difficult. Suddenly, Kinwo had a flash of inspiration in his mind. He remembered the scene where a white boiled egg slapped the soul of Dr. Banner out of the Hulk's body. How could he forget the Ancient One? If it was the Ancient One, it would not be difficult to solve the Green Goblin personality. A slap can easily separate the Hulk and Dr. Banner. It must not be difficult to separate the Green Goblin and Norman Osborn. Anyway, he and the Ancient One have reached a short alliance. It is reasonable to ask her for help. Besides, if you ask her for help now, there will be no chance in the future. Now that the most difficult problems have been solved, there is no need to worry about the rest. But the long night is too long to sleep. May Parker is still shopping with Wo-Shan. It's just right for him to go and see the excitement. Kinwo jumped out of the window and flew directly to Tony's villa. At the same time in Tony's mansion, Tony didn't know that his home had become the target of many people. Pepper rested her head on Tony's chest, her face full of unhappiness. Tony, you guy, May Parker and Roxanne went shopping today. We had an appointment. Now it's all delayed by you. Tell me, how are you going to compensate me? Tony raised his eyebrows when he heard this. Isn't my compensation enough now? Pepper couldn't help rolling her eyes when she heard Tony's shameless words. Jarvis, help me inform May and the others that we will have a girlfriend's night tonight. Pepper's voice fell, but there was silence, and Jarvis didn't answer. I have turned on the do not disturb now. Jarvis will not take the initiative to disturb us, Tony said with a smug smile on his face. Tony, stop making trouble, quickly remove it. If there is any emergency, it will be troublesome if we can't contact you. Pepper frowned and said, as the current ruler of Stark Industries, Pepper doesn't like this behavior of cutting off contact with the outside world. It's easy to have problems. However, Tony didn't care about it at all. He waved his hand and said, it's only 3 or 4 hours. What can go wrong? Let's enjoy our world of 2 tonight. Tony, I said, cancel this mode. This is not good. Pepper frowned, and her tone slightly increased. Seeing Pepper like this, Tony had to raise his hands and surrender and took the initiative to cancel the do not disturb mode, but he still muttered in a hard voice, it's just a few hours. What can go wrong? Sir, Mr. Peter contacted you urgently 15 minutes ago. Norman Osborn seems to have mutated and will be unfavorable to you. I have raised the security mode to the highest level. The restrictions were lifted, and Jarvis immediately informed Tony of Peter's affairs. Tony's face froze when he heard this. Pepper on the side frowned and became nervous. She took Spider-Man's reminder to heart. Pepper had a good impression of Spider-Man and knew that he was a very stable child in big things. He would never do it without a purpose. Norman Osborn, if she remembered correctly, Osborn Industries has not been peaceful recently. A lot of things have happened inside. Could it be that the change in Norman Osborn is related to the things inside Osborn Industries? Oh, Potts, don't worry, boom. Just when Tony wanted to comfort Pepper and told her not to worry too much, there was a loud noise outside the house. Fuck, Tony exclaimed and immediately threw Pepper under him. However, nothing happened. Even the windows were not broken at all. Sir, there are unknown people using strong explosives to attack. The defense of the gate is currently broken by 46%, and it can withstand 2 more explosive attacks at most. Jarvis's serious reminder sounded. Tony's teeth were almost broken with hatred, and his face was hit. It was burning. At the same time, he was secretly glad that Spider-Man reminded him that the safety mode of the villa had been turned on. Otherwise, he and Pepper would definitely receive constant shocks. You know, the protection measures of the gate are no worse than his new battle armor. As a result, it was broken by 46% in an instant. Such power is not much worse than his previous arc pulse cannon. The person attacking Tony's villa outside is naturally the Green Goblin. Seeing that the golden red metal plate blocked his super pumpkin bomb, the Green Goblin couldn't help but frown. It was as if Tony didn't expect him to have such a strong attack. The Green Goblin didn't expect Tony's protective measures to be so good. His super pumpkin bomb is 5 times more powerful than ordinary pumpkin bombs. Because it is extremely difficult to manufacture, so he only brought 3 or 4 with him. Originally, he thought he could hit the target with one shot. With this pumpkin bomb, he could directly blow up Tony's villa. But who would have thought that he couldn't even break the door? This damn Tony Stark. It's like a turtle shrinking in his shell. I want to see how tough you can be. Gritting his teeth, the Green Goblin took out another super pumpkin bomb. However, just when he was about to throw it, whoosh, suddenly, a sound of breaking wind came to his ears. The Green Goblin was secretly shocked and quickly dodged to the side. As a result, he saw a thread flashing with blue electric light flying past his ear. It was just a little bit away from landing on his body. Who is it? Get out here. The Green Goblin looked around, trying to find the person who shot the thread, but he saw nothing. Chapter 306. Okay, Father, you are back. Let's cut the birthday cake together, Harry Osborn said, and asked the butler to push out the cake that had been prepared long ago. Spider-Man spent his entire birthday in a daze because of Norman Osborn. He was not in the mood to live here as agreed, so he found an excuse and declined Harry Osborn's invitation. He left Norman Osborn's villa with Ned. However, the moment he walked out of the door, he felt the feeling of being on the back again. He turned around suddenly and found that Norman Osborn was looking at him grimly behind the curtains. It was like looking at a prey. Spider-Man's heart tightened, and an ominous premonition rose from the bottom of his heart. Chapter 164. The Green Goblin appears in dissolution. On the way home, Spider-Man thought more and more that something was wrong. Norman Osborn's ferocious and murderous eyes kept reappearing in his mind, and he could feel that the other party's murderous intent was most likely directed at Tony. Although Spider-Man didn't understand why Norman Osborn had such a strong desire to kill Tony Stark, the two of them had almost no intersection, let alone any hatred. But with the idea of being foolproof, Spider-Man still called Tony. Tony on the other end of the phone was obviously busy with some unspeakable things. So it was Jarvis who answered the phone. Mr. Peter, Mr. is busy now and can't answer your call. If you have anything, you can tell me and I will relay it as soon as possible. Jarvis's kind voice sounded. Spider-Man suddenly became anxious. The situation is unclear now, and Norman Osborn may take action at any time. With the sense of danger that Norman Osborn brought to him, the other party is likely to have mastered some powerful power. It is very likely to pose a threat to Tony. He didn't know what Tony was busy with. If it was developing a new battle armor, it is hard to say when he could receive the news. Mr. Jarvis, the situation is urgent. Norman Osborn is likely to have undergone some kind of abnormality. He may take action against Mr. Stark. So please notify Mr. Stark immediately now. Peter said anxiously. Sorry, Mr. Peter, I will improve the security settings, but I really can't disturb Mr. Tony now. I can't go against Mr. Tony's instructions. Jarvis' tone revealed a hint of human embarrassment. Well, okay, Mr. Jarvis, as long as Mr. Tony's instructions are lifted, please notify him as soon as possible. Spider-Man said unwillingly. He knew that since Jarvis said so, Tony had already issued some kind of death order. No matter what he said, Jarvis would eventually obey Tony's instructions. With a long breath, Spider-Man hung up the phone. He made a decision in his heart that no matter what, he couldn't let Tony get into any trouble. So he decisively got off the bus, came to a dark alley, and took out the Spider-Man suit from his backpack. Looking at the Spider-Man suit in his hand, Spider-Man couldn't help but remember that when he went out in the morning, Kinlawo told him to bring the Spider-Man suit with him. He was a little unhappy at first, but he really couldn't refuse Kinlawo's request. Now it seems that Brother Kin is really foresighted. Isn't this useful? But on second thought, the meaningful smile on Kin's mouth in the morning, no matter how I think about it, I feel something is wrong. After thinking about it, Spider-Man sent a message to Kinlawo, informing him of what he found and the decision. After confirming that the text message was sent successfully, Spider-Man decisively changed into his battle suit, rushed out of the alley, wandered around with Spider Silk, and rushed towards Tony's villa. Norman Osborn's villa. The birthday party is over. The servants cleaned up the messy scene. Harry Osborn fell asleep in his room early because he drank a lot of wine. Norman Osborn was in his own secret room. He was fiddling with many high-tech equipment, single-person Batwing aircraft, pumpkin bombs and other things. He stroked the cold Batwing blade. Norman Osborn's expression became extremely distorted. Whether in terms of demeanor or state, he seemed to have changed into a different person. The night of killing. What a wonderful night. Tony Stark, I will make sure you don't see the sun tomorrow. Ha ha ha. And those bastards in the military. It's your turn tomorrow. Wait, you all have to die. Ha 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 he he he. Norman Osborn laughed crazily. However, he installed the alloy exoskeleton bit by bit, Batwing single-person aircraft, assemble pumpkin bombs and a series of weapons on the exoskeleton and the aircraft. Finally, put a green devil mask on his face. Norman Osborn looked at himself in the mirror. The distorted face under the mask revealed a morbid satisfaction. Damn those bastards who don't know the goods. What a perfect work. They don't know how to appreciate it. Then go and appreciate the scenery of hell. After saying this, Norman Osborn, no, now he should be called the Green Goblin. The Green Goblin stepped on the aircraft and flew directly away from the villa from the passage of the secret room. Disappeared into the night. The Green Goblin officially appeared. Hero apartment. Kinlawo was lying on the sofa, watching the sudden message. He sat up suddenly. He never expected that what he expected was so accurate. Norman Osborn actually completely awakened the Green Goblin personality, otherwise, it would not bring danger to Spider-Man. Kinlawo was secretly thinking about how to deal with Norman Osborn. Actually, there is nothing wrong with Norman Osborn. There are many objective factors for him to become a supervillain. It has little to do with him. The Green Goblin personality is just a failed product produced by the serum. And Spider-Man has a very good relationship with Norman Osborn's son. Kinlawo didn't want to see that the two of them would eventually turn against each other like the first generation. So many messy things happened. It was not until the end that Harry forgave Spider-Man. Originally, Kinlawo wanted to secretly deal with the Green Goblin and prevent Spider-Man from meeting him. In that case, even if Harry had hatred in his heart, it would be difficult to blame Spider-Man. But after thinking about it, Kinlawo gave up the idea. If he really did that, wouldn't he just become a nanny and a housekeeper? And it wouldn't be good for Spider-Man's future growth at all. But he had to intervene. Chapter 307. OMG. Is this guy crazy? Peter is definitely crazy. Damn it. If you don't want this opportunity, you can give it to me. Why refuse? This guy is a fool. Harry Osborn ignored the discussions of the people around him. He just looked at his best friend with some confusion and asked, "Why, Peter, don't you admire my father very much? What a good opportunity. If you are embarrassed, then there is no need. Your learning ability and grades are obvious to all of us. You are definitely qualified for the role of assistant." Spider-Man couldn't help but smile bitterly when he heard this. He didn't want to pretend to be cool, but now that Harry asked this, he had to say it. Spider-Man knew Harry and knew that he would hardly give up on things he had determined unless there was a sufficient reason. "In fact, I am now Mr. Tony Stark's intern assistant, so I can only appreciate your kindness," Spider-Man said helplessly. As soon as these words came out, it was more shocking than Spider-Man's rejection of Harry Osborn's proposal just now. Everyone looked at Spider-Man with eyes that were no longer filled with envy, jealousy, or hatred. Instead, they looked at him with disbelief, and more like an alien. Tony Stark. He was even more powerful than Norman Osborn, especially after he announced that he was Iron Man. Almost no one could participate in Tony's armor research. Even those famous scholars were willing to lower their status, but it was still a waste of effort. And now Spider-Man actually said that he had become Tony Stark's intern assistant. How could they accept this? However, although they didn't want to believe the truth of Spider-Man's words, they all knew that Spider-Man was a person who could hardly lie, let alone lie about such a thing. After all, that was Tony Stark. Once it got out, the legal department of Stark Industries was not there to eat and drink. Chapter 163 Spider-Sense. Ominous premonition. Harry Osborn circled around Spider-Man for several times. He kept looking at him, and finally put his arm around his shoulders and rubbed his hair fiercely and said, "Bastard Peter, when did you tell me about this? You hid it so deeply that even I didn't know." "Actually, I don't know either." After being shocked, Ned also looked at Spider-Man with a resentful look. That feeling was really like a woman in the boudoir looking at a scumbag who abandoned her. Spider-Man and Harry couldn't help but shudder at the same time. There's nothing to say. It's all because of Brother Kin. If it weren't for him, I wouldn't have had such an opportunity, Spider-Man said, and couldn't help but look at the thick stack of exercises. It's really painful and happy, really. The leaders in 2 fields are vying for you to be their assistant. What can I say about you, bastard Peter? You are really envious of me. Harry rubbed Peter's hair fiercely again. The smile on his face was from the heart. He was really happy for his good friend. Unlike those fake brothers, who are afraid of their brothers suffering and borrowing money, and are even more afraid of their brothers driving Land Rover to show off their wealth. This is really just luck. I just feel that I have failed your kindness, Spider-Man said with embarrassment and shame. Ha ha ha. Harry laughed heartily. What's the use of failing? Your talent is well known to everyone, and in my opinion, perhaps Stark Industries is the most suitable for you. After all, my father— Oh, I can't say, it's just a biological experiment. You may not be able to accept it. Harry, why are you laughing so happily? At this time, a mature and steady middle-aged male voice sounded. Hearing this voice, Harry's smile became even brighter. He turned his head and looked at Norman Osborn and said, "Father, when did you come back?" Norman Osborn has now completely resumed the role of a good father. The look in his eyes looking at Harry Osborn is full of pampering and concern. Now I'm afraid that only Harry can make Norman Osborn maintain his original intention. Just now, there was nothing to do today, so I came back early to celebrate Harry's birthday, Norman Osborn said, and looked at Peter, whose face was still flushed with embarrassment, and said, "Mr. Peter, what are you so happy about? Let me be happy too." Spider-Man raised his head and looked into Norman Osborn's eyes. Then he was stunned. The hair on his body stood up involuntarily. Although on the surface, Norman Osborn's eyes were full of charity and peace. But in fact, Spider-Man felt that he was under a sharp edge. Spider-Man's sense told him that the Norman Osborn in front of him was no longer the Norman Osborn he used to be. He was full of violent aura in his body, as terrifying as a ferocious beast. But Spider-Man couldn't believe it. Why did such a big change happen to a man who had always been like a gentleman? He even suspected that his spider sense was wrong. That feeling was no different from the 2 green monsters he had fought before. Let me tell you. Harry saw Spider-Man's dazed look and thought he was nervous, so he immediately spoke first. "Father, you know, I originally wanted to ask him to be your assistant." "That's great. I still admire Mr. Peter very much," Norman Osborn said with a smile, and there was an inexplicable meaning in his eyes when he looked at Spider-Man. He would not give up Kinlo's genes easily. Now that he has Spider-Man as a springboard, it will definitely be much easier to contact him than if he rushed to do it. It's just an assistant position, so what if he gives this kid a free gift, and the other party's ability is not bad, and he can help him? "Oh, Father, listen to me. I originally had this idea, but who would have thought that Peter would quietly become Tony Stark's assistant?" "OMG, Father, we were really scared at the time." "That's the famous Tony Stark, the leader of the industry," Harry Osborn said, with a gleam in his eyes. Even though Norman Osborn knew that his son was happy for Spider-Man, and didn't mean anything else, he felt an inexplicable anger in his heart, and it was growing rapidly. Tony Stark again. What's so good about that bastard? He just made a bunch of scrap metal. Why do everyone think he's better than me? Damn bastard. Kill you. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to make sure you die without a burial place. Even though Norman Osborn was roaring madly in his heart, he didn't show anything on the surface, and still maintained a graceful smile. Only a hint of cruelty and murderous intent flashed in his eyes. However, this fleeting strangeness was captured by Spider-Man's sensitivity. Spider-Man's heart sank immediately. Now he had to believe that his spider sense was not wrong. "Mr. Norman Osborn, there really was something wrong. Mr. Peter, have you become Tony Stark's assistant now?" "Really, Tony is so lucky. It's enviable." Although Tony Stark is a little bit dissolute, his talent is unquestionable, and he is more imaginative than me. He is definitely the most suitable candidate for you. I am sincerely happy for you. Norman Osborn looked at Spider-Man and said with a smile, If it were before, Spider-Man would only feel embarrassed and nervous when facing Norman Osborn's expression, but after seeing the other party's fleeting brutal eyes, Spider-Man only felt uncomfortable when facing Norman Osborn. The other party was really hypocritical. Chapter 308. He urgently needs the support of a big boss. The military can be said to be Norman Osborn's last straw. The call was quickly connected. A cold voice came over. Norman Osborn, our cooperation can end. Norman Osborn, who had just squeezed out a smile, froze instantly when he heard the words. His voice began to tremble. General, why? My enhancement potion has been completed and has no side effects. Why do you want to end the cooperation? The one who originally cooperated with you was Ross, the short-lived ghost, and I just took over his mess. Your so-called enhancement potion, in my opinion, has long been outdated. Instead of cooperating with you to experiment with that unreliable enhancement potion, it is better to transfer this resource to Stark Industries. I now think that the iron armor is much more valuable than your enhancement potion, so our cooperation can end, and you don't need to make this call in the future. Hearing these words, Norman Osborn felt dizzy and the whole world seemed to spin. Suddenly, Norman Osborn's face changed drastically, and he shouted frantically, "Assholes! You assholes! My strengthening potion is 1,000 times better than that broken armor. 10,000 times. Are you all blind? Norman Osborn, watch your words. Who do you think you are talking to? Do you want to die?" The general's voice became even colder, and his words were full of threats. "Wait. You all wait for me. I won't let you go." Beep beep. Before Norman Osborn finished speaking, a busy tone came from the other end of the phone. "Fuck." Norman Osborn roared, and smashed the phone to pieces with a punch. Chapter 162. Birthday Party? Pretend to be X-crackling. Norman Osborn's office was filled with loud noises. Even the staff at the lower level could hear it clearly. In addition, the secretary's terrified expression before leaving, and the red handprint on his neck. Everyone was terrified and lowered their heads to do their work seriously, fearing that the fire at the city gate would affect the innocent. Norman Osborn stood in the office that was almost in ruins. He kept panting, and his face became extremely distorted. The voice in his ear became clear at this moment. "Kill them. Kill those who dared to offend you. Kill them all, and cut them into pieces. Kill them." As the bewitching voice continued to sound, the negative emotions in Norman Osborn's heart began to burst out completely. At the beginning, he had no time to study Kinlawo's problem, so he put all his hopes on General Ross, who was painting a big pie. He hoped to rely on him to fight a comeback. As a result, General Ross died inexplicably, which dealt him a huge blow. Fortunately, the military did not mean to give up their plan, but it was replaced by a greedy guy. Norman Osborn paid a lot of price to maintain this fragile relationship, due to Norman Osborn's previous mistakes and the calculations of other shareholders. In short, various reasons. As a result, he is now completely at the end of his rope. Now the only hope is to develop a super-enhanced serum, a serum that is stronger and more stable than a super soldier. Only in this way can he turn things around and avoid being doomed. Who would have thought, when it rains, it pours? He fought hard, even at the cost of his own life, to transform the medicine for the genetic disease into a super serum. However, the disease was cured, but the side effects of the serum also appeared. This serum actually made people have a terrible personality full of negative emotions. Now the military has given up on him again. Under the influence of despair and negative personality, Norman Osborn's emotions that he had finally stabilized collapsed completely. In Norman Osborn's villa, Harry, as the protagonist today, naturally, he was the center of attention, chatting and laughing with the admiration of countless peers. However, there was one person who didn't fit in among these people. That was Spider-Man. At this time, Spider-Man was writing furiously. He kept doing exercises filled with Dragon Country characters, and the fat black man Ned on the side was holding a bilingual dictionary, constantly comparing the Dragon Country characters on it, and marked them for Spider-Man. As time went by, Harry gradually got tired of the compliments from the people around him. After cleverly getting away from those people, he went straight to Spider-Man and asked, "Peter, what are you doing? Homework?" Spider-Man smiled bitterly and said, What kind of homework is this? These are simply my nightmares. Alas, it's hard to describe. I won't say it. Seeing Spider-Man sighing, Harry showed a pitiful look on his face. Ned was relieved when Spider-Man stopped, rubbed his sore wrist, and put the dictionary on the table. Although Harry didn't know what these were, he had seen pigs run even though he had never eaten pork. He was not unfamiliar with Dragon Chinese characters, and he knew how difficult it was to learn them. He had tried to learn Dragon Chinese characters before, but he decisively gave up within 3 days because it was too difficult. It was a hellish text. Peter, why don't you come to be my father's assistant in the laboratory, so that you have a reason not to do these damn things? Harry looked at Spider-Man with a serious face and said. As soon as these words came out, everyone's eyes were on Spider-Man. They were filled with envy, jealousy and hatred. The originally lively birthday party also became quiet. Outsiders don't know how serious Norman Osborn's situation is at this time. In the eyes of Harry and other classmates, being able to become Norman Osborn's assistant is definitely a step to heaven. They don't even dare to dream about it. As a result, such an opportunity is placed in front of Spider-Man. These people don't doubt Harry's promise at all. After all, Norman Osborn is famous for spoiling children. As long as Harry asks, Norman Osborn will never refuse. Spider-Man still can't stand this kind of scene that everyone is paying attention to. But he is also very tempted by Harry's proposal, especially there is a reason not to do these damn exercises. But on second thought, Spider-Man decisively gave up this idea. Brother Ken would never let him go, and now he has become Tony's trainee assistant. As the saying goes, a minister cannot serve two masters. Compared with Norman Osborn's knowledge, Spider-Man is more inclined to Tony. Spider shook his head and said, I'm sorry, Harry, please forgive me for not saying that. When he said this, not only Harry Osborn was stunned, but even the people around him were shocked. Chapter 309. The mirror space shattered, and Kinluo's figure appeared in the pavilion. Kinluo looked at the place where Master Guyi left, and he couldn't help but start thinking about the things in hell. Mephisto must do it, whether the goddess of death is involved or not. He will not change his decision. But now it's okay, although he and Guyi didn't say it clearly. But in fact, they have formed a temporary alliance. Kinluo helped her deal with her affairs after death, and she helped Kinluo solve some unnecessary troubles before she died. Both sides benefit. Just for this reason, white braised eggs are hundreds of times stronger than black braised eggs. And the benefits that Kinluo can get are not just the help of Guyi. In the future, Benedict Cumberbatch will definitely confront Dormammu in the Dark Dimension. After all, Dormammu has been coveting the Earth for a long time, although the Earth is openly considered Odin's territory. But that old Yincoin will definitely not fight to the death with Dormammu because of the Earth. If it weren't for Guyi, the Earth would probably have been swallowed up by the Dark Dimension long ago. Kinluo has a lot of interest in the Dark Dimension. I heard that the Dark Dimension is composed of dark power. The power of Devil May Cry and the power of the ghosts and gods all belong to the category of dark power. At that time, maybe he can summon the ghosts and gods to devour the Dark Dimension. The possibility of such a thing is quite high. Moreover, the pure dark power is definitely more powerful than the evil soul for the improvement of the Devil May Cry series. Maybe he can directly reach the realm of the Dark Lord and directly summon the ninth ghost god, the priest Jiger. With Brother G, the goddess of death is just a little sister. It can be easily grasped. Chapter 161. Crazy Norman Osborn Industries. In the bathroom of Norman Osborn's office, Norman Osborn was washing his face desperately. The muscles of his arms were bulging high. Because of the strong friction on his face, his whole face became red, and a layer of skin was almost wiped off. No, absolutely not. There is no problem with my serum, absolutely no problem. Norman Osborn looked at himself in the mirror. Half of his face was filled with fear and panic, while the other half was evil and crazy. It was as if his nerve endings were dead, and he looked like a Buddha and a demon. Ding-ling-ling. Suddenly, a communication ring rang. The ring seemed to have stimulated Norman Osborn. His expression changed rapidly, and his whole face was filled with crazy anger. Bang! Crack! He threw a punch and smashed the entire mirror. Then Norman Osborn rushed out of the secret room and roared at the young secretary who was ringing the doorbell. Asshole, who told you to disturb me? Didn't I say you are not allowed to disturb me now? How dare you disobey my orders? Looking at Norman Osborn, whose eyes were red and whose face was distorted with anger, the young secretary's legs went limp, and she fell to the ground in fear. She said tremblingly, "Mr. Norman, this is from the military. I quit. I quit." The young secretary looked at Norman Osborn's increasingly inhuman face, and her mentality completely collapsed. She screamed and ran out of the door. "Damn you, you can't even speak clearly. What's the use of you?" Norman rushed to the young secretary, grabbed her neck with one hand, and lifted her up, his eyes filled with murderous intent. The young secretary's face flushed all of a sudden, and her hands kept grabbing Norman's arms, kicking her legs in the air, trying to break free from Norman Osborn's palm. But Norman Osborn's body had been transformed by the Green Goblin serum at this time. But in terms of physical strength, he was not weaker than the captain who had been injected with the super soldier serum. It can even be said that he was a little stronger. With the young secretary's weak body, how could she possibly break free from Norman Osborn? Ding-ling-ling. Suddenly, a unique phone ring sounded. The moment he heard the ring, Norman Osborn's crazy eyes were instantly dazed, and then he regained his clarity. "OMG!" Seeing the secretary who was almost rolling his eyes, Norman Osborn exclaimed and quickly let go of his hand. Cough, cough, cough. As soon as the young secretary landed, he covered his neck and began to cough madly, with tears and snot running down his face. Norman Osborn covered his head and wanted to comfort the secretary, but he couldn't say anything. He just felt that his mind was very confused, as if there were countless voices saying something in his ears, but he couldn't hear clearly. In short, it was very confused and annoying, and he wanted to kill someone now! The young secretary looked at Norman Osborn, whose expression kept changing, and was so scared that his pupils almost collapsed. Cough, cough. "Help, I want to resign." He didn't care about coughing, and after screaming again, he turned and ran outside. This time Norman Osborn didn't stop him, but just grabbed his hair hard. He tried to use the pain of pulling his hair to wake himself up. Ding-ling-ling. The familiar ringtone sounded again. It's amazing that Norman Osborn felt much calmer after hearing the ringtone. He picked up the phone and found that it was a call from his son, Harry Osborn. He set a separate ringtone for his son. For this only son, Norman Osborn gave all his love. It was because of this that he was able to temporarily suppress the tyranny and madness in his heart through the ringtone of the phone. Norman Osborn ignored the young secretary. It was just a secretary. If she ran away, she ran away. It didn't matter. He took out the phone from his pocket with some trembling. Looking at the photo of his son on the phone, Norman Osborn felt more at ease. Norman Osborn let out a long breath, trying to keep himself calm as much as possible, and said, "Harry, what's wrong? Is there anything wrong?" Harry Osborn: "Father, today is my birthday. Don't forget to come back tonight. By the way, Peter will stay at home tonight. Is that okay?" When Norman Osborn heard the name Peter, he was stunned for a moment, and then his eyes lit up. The figure of Kinlo appeared in his mind. If he could get the genes of that man, maybe his own problems could be solved. "Of course, Peter is your best friend. How could I refuse? I will definitely go back tonight. Don't worry." Norman Osborn forced himself to suppress the excitement in his heart and said, "That's great, Father. I'll wait for you at home." Harry Osborn hung up the phone happily. He began to set up his birthday party. Norman Osborn sat in his boss chair. He closed his eyes and took deep breaths. Suddenly he remembered the military that the secretary had just mentioned. Could it be that the military contacted him? Thinking of this, Norman Osborn opened his eyes suddenly. He ran towards his special phone. Osborn Industries is now on the verge of collapse. Chapter 310. However, Kinlo was not happy at all about Guyi's proposal. Instead, he waved his hands and said, "Master Guyi, I appreciate your kindness. I want to deal with Mephisto alone, so I won't bother you." It was like a joke. Kinlo didn't want Guyi to grab the head. In addition to personal grudges, he wanted to destroy Mephisto because he valued his blood and strength. If Guyi took action, who knows how much blood would be lost. Guyi seemed to have guessed Kinlo's thoughts. He showed a meaningful smile on his face. "Young man, don't worry. Mephisto is yours. I don't mean to compete with you, but it's not so easy for you to kill Mephisto. After all, he is closely related to Hell. If he can't be isolated from Hell, you want to kill him, which is equivalent to destroying the entire Hell. Kinluo heard Guyi's words and showed a confident smile on his face. Why not? My target is not just Mephisto. Guyi nodded, and then shook his head. Young man, I don't deny that you have the power to destroy Hell, but if you really do that, I'm afraid there will be a being far superior to Mephisto who will come to trouble you, and I can help you solve the problem of that being. Kinluo's face changed slightly. The meaning of Guyi's words is very clear. There is someone above Mephisto. In other words, there is another master behind Hell, and Mephisto is just the master of Hell on the surface. Master Guyi, what is that being you are talking about? Kinluo asked curiously. However, Guyi did not answer directly, but shook his head and said, you can't call it by name, otherwise she will sense it. In short, young man, just let it go, and don't worry about the problem of that being. Kinluo heard the words and began to think secretly in his heart. It can be said that there are very few candidates who can be the existence behind Mephisto's father level, and it is even more obvious that you can't call it by name. It's nothing more than the 5 great gods of the Marvel world: Annihilation, Eternity, Death, Infinity, and Devourer of Planets. The only one who could be associated with Hell was the goddess of Death. I never expected that she was behind Mephisto. This goddess of death is not the self-proclaimed goddess of death in Asgard like Hela. Her power is very strong. She is definitely a being that surpasses the Father of Heaven, the master of the underworld of death. It is said that Thanos destroyed half of the life in the universe. In addition to the ideal balance, there is also the factor of pleasing the goddess of death. Otherwise, wouldn't it be better to use the infinite gems to double the resources in the universe? Why do you have to destroy half of the life to maintain balance? If you really mess with the goddess of death, it will be a big trouble. After all, she is the god who controls death, and her strength can be ranked among the 5 gods. Compared with the planet Devourer who is never full, her strength is definitely more than 1 level higher. However, Kinluo did not have any fear or other emotions. After all, he is also a man with a system, so he is not afraid at all. The next wave of fishing may bring him some powerful things. By then, maybe the goddess of death will have to take maternity leave. Seeing Kinluo's expression change from uncertain to calm again, a trace of surprise flashed in Guyi's eyes. She asked tentatively, young man, have you guessed who I'm talking about? Kinluo smiled and nodded, then stretched out his thumb and wiped his neck. The meaning was obvious. You really surprised me. Guyi shook her head with emotion, and the look in her eyes when she looked at Kinluo quietly changed. Apart from anything else, the fact that Kinluo knew his opponent was likely to be the death of the 5 gods and could still maintain such a mentality was enough for her to look up to him. Chapter 160 Old 6 Ancient 1. Many benefits. Kinluo raised his hand and gestured. Master Ancient 1, you can talk about the second thing. Actually, it's nothing. I just hope you can control your power and try not to use some items that can guide other powers. It's okay now that I'm here. When the day I'm gone, your power is likely to cause indelible damage to the earth. I guess you don't want to see that day. Ancient One shook his head, and obvious fatigue and helplessness flashed across his face. Wait, what do you mean? Can you explain it more clearly? Don't play dumb here. What items that guide other powers? Kinluo looked at Ancient One, his face full of question marks. For example, your red long sword. I guess you also know that it has a terrible power that can pull meteorites, right? Ancient One pointed to Kinluo's palm and said with a helpless look, fuck. Don't tell me that you intercepted the meteor of the flowing star meteorite knife. Kinluo was so shocked that he almost jumped up. Is the name of that red longsword called the Flowing Star Meteorite Sword? What a good name, Guyi said with a helpless look on his face. As you said, I have blocked a total of 1,736 meteorites. If these meteorites land on the Earth, it will cause many unnecessary disasters. Kinluo's mouth twitched wildly. He really wanted to print his size 44 shoe print on the white salted egg in front of him. Damn it. No wonder he couldn't summon a meteor after using so many skills and attacks. Kinluo originally thought it was his luck, and the non-African attribute caused him to be unable to trigger the special effects of the flowing star meteorite sword. It turns out that Guyi, the sixth one, is making trouble with her strength. It is not too difficult to block meteors, as long as she doesn't block too many at once. More than 1,700 meteorites. Doesn't it mean that he has triggered more than 1,700 meteorites? In this way, he is not a non-African. He is simply the great European emperor, Master Ancient One. Have you ever thought that those meteorites are helping me attack the enemy? If you cause me any problems, what will happen? Kinluo looked at Ancient One with a little dissatisfaction. However, Ancient One shook his head, without any shame on his face. The object you were dealing with at that time could be easily dealt with even without the help of meteorites. If there is any accident, I will not stand idly by. Hearing this explanation, Kinluo actually felt that what Bailudin said was very reasonable. He felt speechless. I say, Master Ancient One, I won't bother you to do this in the future. I know it in my heart, and I haven't really experienced the power of this knife to summon meteorites. It's really a pity. When Kinluo said the last sentence, he almost bit his back teeth. It doesn't matter, I can let you experience it. Anyway, you already have a more powerful weapon. As he said that, Ancient One stretched out his hand and pointed, and the sky above the ground suddenly cracked, and then a huge meteorite with flames flew out from the sky below. Looking at the meteorite that was 100 meters wide, Kinluo almost cried. What a cool ability. The power is no less than that of the blind swordsman's meteorite. And can he summon so many meteors in succession? As long as Kinluo is lucky enough, he can even summon meteors infinitely when using the flowing star meteorite knife. Boom. Kinluo raised his hand, and the sword energy surged. Countless sword energies directly smashed the meteorite, and the broken stones smashed towards the ground in the sky, creating deep pits. Anyway, this is a mirror space, and after it is lifted, everything will no longer exist. It seems that he was a little scared by Kinluo's resentful eyes. Guyi stood up, took out a piece of paper and put it on the table, saying, Young man, this is my phone number. If you need any help, you can contact me at any time. Kinluo was stunned when he heard this, and then asked with a strange look, Master Guyi, are you so uncool? Logically speaking, you shouldn't give me a jade pendant or something like that, the kind that you can sense when you crush it. Guyi's mouth corners slightly raised and said, Young man, don't think of the master too magically. I do have the soul jade pendant you mentioned, but it's just a tool. Now that technology has developed more convenient tools, why should I give up simplicity for complexity? Is it just for the coolness you mentioned? Kinluo gave a thumbs up. That makes sense. Master Guyi keeps pace with the times. I admire him. Then, let's contact by phone. Master Guyi waved his hand, sparks flashed under his feet, and the whole person disappeared in the mirror space. It was also at this moment, if you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 311. After Kinluo marveled at the magic of magic for a while, he set his sights on Guyi. The real Guyi is not the same as the one played by the actors in the original plot. Think about it. How can an actor play the kind of indifference that has experienced thousands of years? Although Guyi's eyes are calm, they give Kinluo the feeling of an abyss. Unfathomable. Kinluo is looking at Guyi, and the other party is also looking at Kinluo. Guyi is very curious, why a person who should have been ordinary and should have died accidentally in the future, suddenly, he became such a powerful existence. In fact, Guyi has many guesses in his mind, including the one that Kinluo is most afraid of. But think about it, Guyi will not easily draw a conclusion before it is confirmed. Compared with Guyi's 1,000 years of chi cultivation, Kinluo is obviously not as calm as him. He doesn't want to stare at a white-faced bald man in an upside-down world, so he took the lead and said, Should I call you the Supreme Mage or Master Ancient One? It's alright. I don't really care what you call me. Ancient One smiled slightly. His voice was soft, and it made people feel very comfortable. Okay, Master Ancient One, I don't know what you want to talk to me about. Don't tell me you want me to inherit your position as the Supreme Mage. Kinluo said this, and a vigilant look flashed in his eyes when he looked at Ancient One. If it was really as he said, then he would definitely turn around and leave without saying a word. Although the title of Supreme Mage is quite domineering, the responsibility to be born is definitely far greater than this title. Supreme Mage, Guardian of the Earth, whoever wants to be it can be it. Anyway, Kinluo will never get involved. There is no way. He is such a person who knows how to protect himself. There is no such great and lofty ideal in his heart. Don't worry, young man, my successor will not be you, even if my heart is very much looking forward to you being able to replace me, but I know that it is impossible. A trace of helplessness flashed in Ancient One's eyes. She really hopes that Kinluo can inherit the position of the Supreme Sorcerer. After all, the other party's strength is there. With Kinluo, she can retire with peace of mind. No need to worry about the future of Kamardage, not to mention the mess in the Dark Dimension, because Kinluo's strength is enough to solve all problems. Unfortunately, Guyi knows that this is impossible, because among the countless futures she has seen, none of them is Kinluo inheriting the position of the Supreme Sorcerer. It can even be said that there is no future in which Kinluo nods and agrees. Faced with something that is almost absolutely impossible, Guyi will naturally not force it. At this time, Kinluo was slightly relieved. As long as it is not a matter of the Supreme Sorcerer, and Guyi has no ill intentions, then everything else is easy to say. Young man, I asked you to come here today mainly for two things. Guyi took the initiative to speak. Obviously, this is going to speak directly. It was also at this moment, the system prompt sound rang in Kinluo's ears. Ding. Important plot characters detected. Supreme Mage middle. Ancient One special buff obtained. There is a certain chance that the fishing rod will not be consumed the next time you fish. Kinluo's eyes lit up slightly, but they soon hid. After all, he was facing the unfathomable white-brained eggs, so he still needed to control his emotions. Seriously speaking, Kinluo really didn't expect that Ancient One would give him such a special buff. As long as his luck is not too bad, he can fish twice directly, plus the bonus of the previous buff. Good guy. This is going to be a success. It's a pity that such a buff is hard to come by, and it can only take effect once. Otherwise, Kinluo's dream of unlimited fishing is likely to come true. Now with this buff, Kinluo will pay more attention to the fishing rod for the next fishing. There is no way not to pay attention. If you get a white fishing rod, then Kinluo might really jump into the river, although the probability of him being drowned by water is lower than the restart of the universe explosion. Ancient One noticed Kinluo's abnormal expression. He didn't understand what was going on, but he didn't think much about it. She said to Kinluo seriously, "Young man, my days are numbered." Kinluo was not surprised at all when he heard this explosive news. He just raised his hand to signal Ancient One to continue. As a time traveler, how could he not know what Ancient One's state of mind was at this time? In the original plot, she was killed by Xilius. Just kidding. Xilius was just one of Ancient One's many disciples. Compared with Ancient One, his little power is a world of difference. It's a compliment to him. Rather than saying that Xilius killed Ancient One, it's better to say that Ancient One committed suicide. Chapter 159 Request and Repay. The existence behind Hell as the Supreme Sorcerer, Ancient One's responsibility is arduous and heavy. In order to protect the earth and implement his beliefs, Ancient One even risked the world's disapproval and absorbed the dark power of his mortal enemy Dormammu to prolong his life. But she is essentially immortal after all. Years of protection have made her extremely tired. Now the Ancient One has made it clear that he wants to die, but he cannot let go of his responsibility as a guardian for the time being. So after the next Supreme Sorcerer is selected, the Ancient One uses the dark forces to end his life in exchange for the new Supreme Sorcerer Benedict Cumberbatch's rebirth. "It seems that you also know a certain future," the Ancient One said, with a hint of helplessness on his face. "I believe you also know that the Earth has always been spied on by some existences. After I die, it will take some time for the new Supreme Sorcerer to grow. If possible, I hope you can help him." Resist those outsiders. Don't let him fight alone. Kinluo nodded readily after hearing this and said, "You can rest assured about this. The earth is also my territory. There is an old saying in the Dragon Kingdom. How can you let others snore when you are lying on your side? I don't want the place where I live to be pointed out by some strange things." The Ancient One smiled. The heaviest stone in his heart was also put down. The future now has many more variables than before. Even with the Time Stone, Ancient One could not guarantee whether the future Supreme Sorcerer could bear this burden. So if he wanted stability, it was almost necessary to ask for external assistance. But let me be frank, Master Ancient One, I am not a nanny, and I have no interest in being a nanny. It is impossible for me to help the new Supreme Sorcerer in every detail, Kinluo said with a serious face. Just as he said, Kinluo had no interest in being a nanny. If Benedict Cumberbatch came to him for every little thing in the future, he might as well take on the burden of the Supreme Sorcerer. In that case, at least it would not be thankless, and he could also have a good reputation. Hearing this, Ancient One nodded repeatedly and said, "That's natural. The Supreme Sorcerer has his own way of growth and can't always rely on others. Unless a powerful enemy outside the earth attacks and endangers his life, you may need to help. You don't have to take ordinary hardships seriously. Besides, I won't let you help in vain. I can help you solve the Lord of Hell's affairs." When Ancient One said this, a hint of coldness flashed in his eyes. In an instant, the temperature around him seemed to drop, and Kinluo felt a sense of crisis. He was secretly surprised. Just a flash of murderous intent could make his body react like this. This Supreme Mage is really worthy of being the Supreme Mage. His strength is so terrifying. Chapter 312. Johnny and Roshan lived in an apartment downstairs from Kinluo. They will not be idle during this period. They have definitely lived next to Kinluo, and all industries need to be dealt with. In addition, Johnny's profession is not an easy thing to solve once and for all. However, with Tony's help, Johnny and Roshan will be able to solve the secular things soon. Old Carter and Warhorse were arranged to settle down opposite Johnny. There is no way. Old Carter's condition is really not suitable to return to the cemetery. Living opposite, Johnny can also take care of him conveniently. Although Johnny and Old Carter have not been in contact for a long time, but Kinluo can see that Johnny has a different feeling for Old Carter. Associated with Johnny's tragic experience since childhood, it is not difficult to guess that he has regarded Old Carter as his father. Old Carter's emotions are a little weaker, but from his various performances, he also regards Johnny as his own son. Otherwise, he would not give the Hellsoul-devouring gun to Johnny. That is Old Carter's strongest weapon except the Eye of Judgment. Even though Old Carter's strength is almost exhausted now, he can still do it by transforming part of his body into the Ghost Rider and enchanting the Hellsoul Devourer. Ordinary characters can't withstand the attack of the Hellsoul Devourer. It can be easily solved with just one shot. Even so, Old Carter still didn't hesitate at all and directly passed the Hellsoul Devourer to Johnny. He didn't care about his own self-protection at all. This shows that an old man and a young man who lost their father, plus the inheritance of the Ghost Rider, the matching degree between the two is quite high, even surpassing Tony and Spider-Man. As for Tony and Pepper, there is nothing to say. Tony had an expression of eating elage throughout the whole process, because he notified Happy to pick him up before the flying sword. So as soon as the flying sword landed, Tony immediately took Pepper and left Kinluo's apartment without any hesitation or intention to stay. Kinluo settled everyone down, and the sky was almost bright. A thrilling night. May Parker felt a little tired in his heart, and soon fell asleep after lying on the bed. Kinluo didn't toss, but he didn't mean to sleep at all, because an unexpected but reasonable person came. The strongest guardian of the earth, the Supreme Sorcerer, Ancient One. In fact, Kinluo had noticed the existence of Ancient One as early as when he destroyed the Death Town. But Kinluo didn't quite understand what the Supreme Sorcerer meant. Was he just passing by, or did he come to find him on purpose? When Kinluo returned home and found that the Ancient One was still following him, he knew in his heart that he was probably coming for him. It's normal to think about it. He has done so many things recently. As the guardian of the earth, it would be strange if Ancient One didn't come to the door. It can even be said that Ancient One came a little late. In the Marvel world, there are 2 braised eggs that can't be messed with. An old Yuncoin black braised egg. You will never know how this guy has no offline, let alone how he will mess with you. Of course, it's not that you can't mess with him. Like Kinluo, his strength exceeds the control range of the black braised egg, then everything will be fine. Otherwise, Nick Fury can let you know what trouble is. Things are endless. I can annoy you to death. In addition, the current shield is basically controlled by Hydra. That's why Kinluo was so taboo about shield. Another white-boiled egg that cannot be provoked is the Supreme Sorcerer Ancient One. Compared with the black-boiled egg, the white-boiled egg is much more terrifying. Nick Fury's trump cards, including the Cosmic Street Slicker and Marvel, in front of Ancient One. It is not an exaggeration to say that it is a joke. There is no comparison at all. Ancient One is really too mysterious. As the guardian of the earth, she has lived for a long time, and she has the strength of a father. In addition, she has absorbed the dark power, the time gem and many other powers, as well as the mysterious magic power. Even those big guys may not dare to say that they can win in front of Ancient One. Kinluo doesn't know if he can defeat Ancient One. It feels about the same. It's about 60-40. He occupies 60%. But Kinluo can feel that Ancient One has no ill will towards him. He has absolute confidence in this. Even Guyi can't escape the induction of the mind's eye. Speaking of which, Kinluo is still looking forward to meeting Guyi. After all, he needs a fishing buff now, and according to the importance of Guyi, he will definitely give him a good buff. Chapter 158 Guyi Tea Party. Special buff. The pavilion outside the apartment. This is the Dragon Country hexagonal ancient-style pavilion specially built by Kinluo. Some habits are really terrible. Kinluo always felt that this piece of open space was missing something. Later, he found that there was a pavilion missing. Kinluo sat on the stone chair. Supreme Mage, if you have anything to say, please come out and say it. As soon as the voice fell, the space in front of Kinluo began to shatter, and soon an inverted world appeared in front of him. In that inverted world, a bald figure was particularly prominent. Mirror space. Kinluo frowned slightly. Kinluo was still quite resistant to entering other people's territory. After a little thought, he decided to go in. One of the functions of the mirror space is to isolate the space, which can effectively prevent the prying of those who are interested. Guyi probably wants to talk to him secretly about something. That's why he used the mirror space. The reason why he is so sure is that Kinluo still hasn't felt any malice from Guyi. Walking slowly into the mirror space, everything around him began to change rapidly. The world is upside down. The ability of the mirror space is definitely a nightmare for people who are dizzy in 3D. After entering the mirror space, Guyi sat in the pavilion with 2 cups of tea in front of him. It was obviously prepared for him. Kinluo was not polite at all in the face of such a scene. He sat down in front of Guyi, picked up the teacup and took a sip. It must be said that Guyi's tea tastes very good. He hasn't tasted such pure tea for a long time. Although Kinluo himself is not very good at tasting tea, he can still taste the good stuff. Putting down the teacup, the tea that had been drunk up filled half of the cup again. Wow, unlimited refills. It seems that Thor also enjoyed similar treatment in the original plot, but that guy drank wheat juice. Chapter 313. She was helpless and angry about her man's suicidal behavior. Explode. Seeing that it was almost time, Kinluo opened his 5 fingers and then clenched his fist. Suddenly, the burning orange-red flame stagnated. Then the violent flame power rushed up to the sky, formed a huge sky-high column of fire. Rumble. The terrifying temperature soared again at this moment, and the surrounding space was completely distorted. It made it impossible for everyone to see what was happening. Only Kinluo was not hindered by his vision. He watched the death town on the ground turned into nothingness under the impact of the violent flames. Soon the power of the flames dissipated. No buildings or trees could be seen on the ground. There was only endless gray, like ashes from burning. All areas affected by the extremely fierce wave-breaking sword were no exception. It was hard to imagine that this place was still a terrifying place a few minutes ago. But now it was dead silent. The terrifying temperature was still rising slowly. Soon, thick dark clouds appeared in the sky, and with a burst of lightning and thunder, Heavy rain fell. Under the pouring of rain, a strange and uncomfortable sound was heard, and soon pieces of water vapor rose. It was like a dream and looked extremely unreal. The evil was completely dissipated, and under the infusion of rain, I believe that this land will soon usher in a new life. As for how long soon is, it is unknown, and Kinluo is not interested in knowing. Anyway, the evil undead has been devoured, and there is almost no possibility for him to come to this land again. Kinluo came to the streamer star meteorite knife. He found that Tony was struggling to dismantle the armor on his body. Because it was deformed, it was extremely difficult to dismantle it. Spider-Man helped on the side, and as for Johnny, because he was carrying old Carter behind him, he could only watch on the side. Kinluo shook his head, waved his hand, and the sword energy surged, accurately cutting the most severely deformed parts of Tony's armor. In the blink of an eye, Tony's armor was shattered by the sword energy. Tony, who was red all over, fell out of the armor like a hairy crab and fell directly on the flowing star meteor knife. Looking at Kinluo in front of him, Tony's face was full of unnaturalness and embarrassment. His face, which was red from the high temperature, became even more ruddy. When can you learn to be honest? Kinluo shook his head helplessly, and the blood power surged. A wisp of pure blood flew out and directly merged into Tony's body. All the burn damage he suffered was restored. Tony's face returned to normal at a speed visible to the naked eye. Other pain on his body disappeared, and Tony couldn't help but let out a comfortable breath. The feeling of being severely burned is quite uncomfortable. Who knew you were so perverted? Tony rolled his eyes at Kinluo, and then turned into a curious baby and asked, by the way, how did you do it, releasing such a high temperature without igniting the atmosphere? Spider-Man was also full of curiosity on the side. Obviously, he also wanted to know the answer to this question. Want to know? Kinluo looked at Tony with a smile and asked, stop talking nonsense and speak quickly, Tony said unhappily, expressing his dissatisfaction with Kinluo's behavior of keeping him in suspense. If you want to know, go and study it yourself. Be virtuous. Kinluo raised an international universal hand gesture, then jumped onto the ancient dust dagger. At the same time, he mobilized the power of fluctuations to isolate the transmission of sound. Tony. At #end%. Kinluo looked at Tony, who was jumping and cursing leisurely, with a leisurely smile on his face. That expression was so annoying. Kin, you are so mean. May Parker looked at the furious Tony and couldn't help it. He covered his mouth and her shoulders trembled. No, this is how to deal with him. He is so old, but he is still as unreliable as a child. Little Pepper's voice sounded, and she agreed with Kinluo's behavior. Tony, who was cursing on the other side, saw Little Pepper nodding to Kinluo. Suddenly he became more irritable, and his voice rose again. This tortured Johnny the Spider and his group. His face was full of helplessness. He looked at Kinluo and the other women over there, and his face was full of envy. Even the warhorse of old Carter began to look unkind at Tony at this time, and his hooves kept stamping. It seemed that he was looking for an opportunity to kick Tony from behind. Soon everyone returned to the city. Since Johnny didn't have any real estate in New York City, he brought Luoshan to Kinluo's apartment. In order to prevent the blood sacrifice from happening again, Kinluo simply bought the entire apartment. Anyway, money is just a number to him now. It doesn't matter. When Tony heard about this, he also wanted to get involved, but Kinluo decisively refused. He didn't want anyone to get involved in this territory, not even Tony. Chapter 157 Hero Apartment. Ancient Ones visit. Kinluo didn't have any special ideas about this apartment before. His concept has always been that a golden nest or a silver nest is not as good as his own doghouse, so even if he had money, he had no intention of moving to another place. Anyway, Kinluo felt quite comfortable here both mentally and physically. But as the number of people around him gradually increased, May Parker, Spider-Man, Tony, and now Johnny and Roshan. Now he has many friends and a few enemies. Mephisto and the evil god Loki can be considered his enemies, the kind who want to kill him all the time. So buying this apartment is not just to hurt innocent people. After all, such a big place, if it is not lived in, it is really a pity. Waste is a crime, but ordinary people must not live here. So the idea of a hero apartment quietly rose in Kinluo's heart. Just like stamp collecting, pull the superheroes and their families who have a good relationship to live together. At that time, some supervillain or demon who doesn't know how to live or die invades the community. It turned out that the new and old Ghost Riders were playing chess, Iron Man and War Machine were drinking and partying, Spider-Man and Daredevil were studying how to become street heroes better. The scene must be quite lively. Since this idea came up, Kinluo has paid special attention to the property rights of this apartment. Not only did he buy the apartment, but he also bought the surrounding land. This area can be said to belong to the Kin family forever. In fact, the main reason why Tony was not allowed to get involved was that this guy had too many things. Whether it was Stark Industries or something else, it was easy for others to take advantage of it. For example, a certain black salted egg gold yen coin. However, in order to show his brother's loyalty, Kinluo generously gave Tony an apartment room, which was regarded as soothing his fragile steel heart. After everyone came to Kinluo's apartment. Chapter 314. It was indeed a bit of a pity. He also wanted to see what the scene would be like when the streamer star Meteor Knife summoned a meteor in the real world. Would it be like a meteorite pulled down by a blind swordsman with the gravity fruit? The sword took off, and soon everyone left the scope of the Death Town. Looking from the sky at this town that seemed to be always filled with haze, it was like a hell on earth, full of dead silence and no vitality. What old Carter said was right, there was really no need to stay in such a place. Everyone, wait for me for a moment, Kinluo said and waved his hand, and the sword stopped in the sky. Then Kinluo stretched out his hand and the ancient dagger appeared in his hand, and the ancient dagger under his feet became illusory. Seeing Kinluo draw his sword, May Parker naturally understood what his man meant, so he quickly reminded him, "Kin, don't go too far." Kinluo smiled and nodded when he heard the words, and made an okay gesture. Tony, who was originally bored, also became a little interested at this time. He was now trying to collect all the information about Kinluo. He has never stopped researching the anti-Kinluo armor, although he felt a little powerless every time he learned more. Tony never thought of giving up. Facing the powerful Kinluo, he was really happy and painful. Johnny and Luo Shan didn't know what Kinluo was going to do, but it seemed that it was a big deal, so the two of them were nervous and looked at him nervously. Looking at this strange Death Town, Kinluo originally wanted to use the Tombstone 3 Awakening Array to test the waters, just to test the power of the new skill. But now the power of ghosts and gods is slightly unstable because of the forced suppression of ghosts and gods just now. If you are not careful, you may not be able to control the scope. At that time, it is very likely that it will not be a town that is destroyed. Moreover, it is not appropriate to use the power of ghosts and gods to clear this dark land, especially the domineering Tombstone 3 Awakening Array. At that time, not only did it not clear this dark land, but it completely turned it into a dark paradise. That would be a lot of fun. So if you want to clear a dark land, the most suitable one among the 4 ghost swords is the power of Azure. Whether it is the breath of thunder god attached to the attack, or the power of the wave fire, it is a good hand to clear the darkness. Extremely fierce wave-breaking sword. Kinluo took a deep breath, and the wave power in his body poured into the ancient short sword. For a moment, the whole ancient short sword was shrouded by the power of extreme flames and turned into the orange-red color of the flame. The surrounding space was distorted by the horrible high temperature. Taking a step forward, Kinluo stood in the air. The horrible scorching heat on the ancient short sword gradually became stronger, since it was the first time to use the level 70 skill. So Kinluo couldn't help but be a little excited. The wave power condensed a little more. Kinluo felt the terrifying power from the ancient short sword. He looked at the Death Town on the ground again. He shook his head helplessly. If that's the case, then so be it. By the way, it's better to destroy the surrounding wetlands. There are many poisonous insects in that place, and it's a disaster to keep it. Alas, I'm really too kind, he sighed in his heart. Then the ancient short sword in his hand slashed towards the void. In an instant, the terrifying power of extreme flame fluctuation surged out. The temperature of the entire space began to soar. The speed of the extreme flame fluctuation power spread very quickly. Soon, the entire Death Town and the surrounding wetlands were completely enveloped. The terrifying temperature caused the water vapor in the wetlands to disappear, and the puddles on the ground began to boil and dissipate. As for the Death Town, there is no need to say more. The buildings began to burn and the land became dry and cracked. The remaining dark forces, under the impact of such extreme yang power, had nowhere to hide and all dissipated into the air. The entire area, due to the extreme flame fluctuation power, all turned into the orange-red color of the flame. Even though everyone had Kinlawo's protection and could not feel the terrifying temperature, but they were not blind, and they could naturally see the distorted air and the Death Town that began to self-ignite. For a time, they were all shocked by Kinlawo's terrifying strength, even though they all knew that Kinlawo was very strong, as strong as the legendary gods. But seeing Kinlawo change a piece of land with a wave of his hand, they were still shocked beyond words. "Jarvis, how is the data collection going?" Tony looked at the scene outside, shocked, and urged Jarvis to check Kinlawo's data. "Sorry, sir, the power exerted by Mr. Kinlawo has exceeded the detection limit, but it is certain that the power released by Mr. Kinlawo has exceeded the temperature of the core of the sun." Jarvis' voice sounded, with a hint of human helplessness and confusion. "Exceeding the temperature of the core of the sun? How is it possible?" If it really exceeded the temperature of the core of the sun, a shocking explosion would have occurred long ago. Tony let out a low cry in disbelief, looking at the space shrouded in orange-red light. His eyes were full of doubts and confusion. Gritting his teeth, Tony decided to rush out to experience this so-called temperature exceeding the core of the sun. Kinlawo frowned slightly when he saw Tony's move. The real power of the extremely fierce, wave-splitting sword is about to explode. Tony is courting death if he goes out at this time, but after thinking about it, Kinlawo still didn't stop Tony. He was also happy to see Tony suffer a setback. At most, he could control the power of the extremely fierce, wave-splitting sword to explode later. As Tony rushed out of the protection of the streamer star meteorite knife, a heat wave suddenly hit, and then the high temperature warning began inside the armor. The flashing red light and the unbearable high temperature made Tony feel as if there were 10,000 grass mud horses flying through his heart. At the same time, the steel armor began to deform at a speed visible to the naked eye. WTF? Seeing that his armor was so vulnerable, Tony was shocked and decisively gave up his suicidal behavior. Like a diving athlete, he dived back into the streamer star meteorite knife. Chapter 156, all burned and returned to the city. After Tony returned to the streamer star meteorite knife, he was still carrying a terrifying heat wave. It made the people around him uncomfortable. Fortunately, Tony had already prepared a cooling device. Tony slapped his arm hard, and suddenly his whole body was covered with amazing white steam. This was the result of rapid cooling, but the almost deformed armor could not be restored. After Tony looked at the series of damaged armors that Jarvis held up, he felt a pain in his heart. You have to know that the cost of each armor is quite expensive. Even Tony, who is so rich, would not want to easily damage an armor. And he has only worn this brand new armor for a short time, and it is not even warm yet. As a result, because of his own suicide, it is almost completely scrapped. It is impossible to repair it. The cost of repair is much more expensive than making a new armor. Not only that, Tony has many burns on his body, almost all of which are caused by the terrifying temperature through the armor. The pain in his body, coupled with the pain in his heart, Tony secretly made up his mind that he would never challenge Kinlawo's skills again in the future. It is really harmful to his body and money. Regarding Tony's experience, no one around paid too much attention, and most of them were still looking at the Death Town in a sea of fire. Even Pepper, who was next to him, just rolled her eyes at Tony. Chapter 315. No, we agreed. You can't break your promise. It was just a joke. Kinlawo flashed and appeared beside May Parker, with a smile on his face. Not even a bit of a demon. Chapter 154. New Sins, Heroes in Their Old Age. Johnny, // Carter, // Roxanne, semicolon, Spider-Man, comma Pepper Potts, dash, semicolon, comma Tony. Looking at the speechless people, Kinluo's face was full of apologetic smiles, but when he saw Tony sighing with disappointment on his face, Kinluo couldn't help but roll his eyes. "Hey, Tony, I'm fine. You look disappointed. You really want to fight me? How could that be? I'm just relieved to see you're fine," Tony said seriously. But he was the only one who knew what was going on. "I definitely can't win in a one-on-one fight, but it's a pity that such a good opportunity for a group fight. It would be strange if I'm not disappointed." Kinluo rolled his eyes again. He was too lazy to care about Tony. Only a fool would believe such a lame excuse. At this time, old Carter threw the hell soul-devouring gun to Johnny beside him. Then he walked to Kinluo and said, "Mr. Kinluo, do you mind if I examine your soul?" As soon as the voice fell, a familiar vortex of flames appeared in old Carter's eyes. This is a sign that the Eye of Judgment is about to open. Faced with such a good thing, Kinluo has absolutely no reason to refuse. He nodded happily, and controlled his mind and the power of ghosts and gods, and let go of his mind. May Parker and the others probably knew what was going on. After all, Kinluo told them when he came back that day. They were also quite curious about the legendary Ghost Rider's ultimate move. It's a pity that the Eye of Judgment didn't have any very significant special effects. They just saw the flames in old Carter's eyes condense into a vortex, and then a beam of fire shot straight into Kinluo's eyes. And then there was nothing else. Familiar life scenes flashed by. Soon they came to Kinluo's sins. Sensing that Kinluo's sins had increased, old Carter's heart sank. Could it be that his soul was really infected by those sinful souls? If so, that would be bad. However, the next scene made old Carter feel that a mouthful of old blood was blocked in his chest, and he couldn't get it up or down. There was no way. As he was in the Ghost Rider state, he could only spit fire, not spit blood. The new scene was the scene when Kinluo made the 3-day tenfold gesture to the little spider. "It's him again. Why is it this little guy again? What kind of hatred do you have between you?" As the latest sins were burned, there were no new sins in Kinluo's soul. Old Carter's Eye of Judgment naturally stopped. On Kinluo's side, with previous experience and few sins, the power of the Eye of Judgment did not cause much impact on him. Even the burning of the Fire of Judgment was not as painful as the last time. However, the comfort after the soul was burned did not decrease at all. Kinluo had to admit that he was really addicted. Old Carter's figure gradually returned to its original form. As the Eye of Judgment was completed, the remaining power of the spirit of vengeance in his body could no longer maintain his transformation. At this time, he was extremely tired, and the whole person seemed to have aged by a dozen years. With his hands on his knees, his body was shaking constantly. Old Carter stared at the little spider not far away, then rolled his eyes and fainted completely. The little spider was full of confusion. "I don't know what this old man means. Why did he faint after looking at me? Is there any special attribute in me? Specializes in fainting old men?" Kinluo shook his head regretfully, stretched out his hand, and the blood and chi flowed out, and the pure vitality once again filled the gap in the vitality of old Carter's body. But the power of the spirit of vengeance can no longer fill it. Now the spirit of vengeance belongs to Johnny, and the power in old Carter's body is a little less. The remaining power of the spirit of vengeance could not even sustain the transformation, let alone the Eye of Judgment. Kinluo probably won't be able to enjoy the pure and sophisticated Eye of Judgment anymore. Johnny's skills are not yet proficient, but there is still some hope. It seems that Johnny will have to practice the Eye of Judgment more in the future. Johnny looked at old Carter with a mixed feeling in his heart, holding the hell soul-devouring gun in his hand. The spirit of vengeance in his body seemed to have sensed the end of the previous generation of hosts. It actually took the initiative to cancel the transformation and let Johnny return to its original state. Johnny helped hold Carter up and put him on his back. It was also at this time that old Carter woke up. After all, most of what old Carter lost was his own vitality, which led to fainting. His vitality was just replenished in time, so it was not surprising that he woke up. "I don't know how many sins I have committed in my life. Although I chose to betray Mephisto and began to atone for my sins hundreds of years ago, I still cannot completely make up for my mistakes. And this place of sin, now those sinful undead have disappeared, and it is a place that harms people, and it may not breed much evil. So I ask you, Kinluo, to destroy this place, and Kinluo, I beg you to kill Mephisto in my lifetime, please, so that I will have no regrets in my life. Old Carter's old and weak voice sounded. Perhaps it was because he had just woken up, or perhaps it was because of the greater fluctuations in his heart, so the requests he said were a little incoherent. At this time, he no longer had the high spirits when he transformed. There was only the sadness of a hero in his twilight years. Rest assured, old Carter, I will make it disappear here. Mephisto will not be free for too long, and you will not wait too long. Kinluo looked at old Carter, his expression full of seriousness and earnestness. Thank you, old Carter said these two selves, and slowly closed his eyes. After a while, the sound of even breathing could be heard. Old Carter fell asleep, with a peaceful expression on his face. God knows how long he hasn't had a good night's sleep. Hideous old Carter's war horse slowly approached old Carter at this time, gently rubbing his master with his nose. The bright horse's eyes revealed humane heart. Take, Johnny, take old Carter and his buddies to the flying sword later. It's almost dawn now, and you can't control the hellfire yet. Don't cause any more trouble. Johnny seemed a little heavy because of old Carter's affairs, so after hearing Kinluo's words, he nodded and didn't say much. Then let's go. It's time to go back after the matter is over. Kinluo waved his hand, and a knife and a sword flew out and floated in the air. Chapter 155 Extremely Fierce. Wave-breaking sword. Tony, who was courting death. The sword was naturally the ancient dagger. Kinluo took a group of female relatives to the ancient dagger. The knife was the long-lost flowing star meteorite knife. Johnny pushed the motorcycle under Kinluo's command, carrying old Carter on his back, and walked onto the flowing star meteorite knife. There were also old Carter's warhorse, as well as Tony and Spider-Man, who looked bored. All walked onto the flowing star meteorite knife. Speaking of which, since obtaining the ancient dagger, Kinluo has never used the flowing star meteorite knife again. It has been placed in the inventory. However, Kinluo has a very special feeling for this weapon, whether in the game in the original world or in this world. I don't know why. He used the flowing star meteorite knife to perform so many attacks and skills, but he didn't summon a meteor once. Chapter 316. If that's the case, then he's a little cow on a plane. And don't forget that as his strength increases, the ghosts and gods are not just these few. There are also ghosts and gods such as Breed of the Ghost, Geyser, etc. In the end, he can even directly open the gate of the underworld where the ghosts and gods are. Damn, tens of thousands of ghosts and gods are not a dream. Chapter 153 Dual System Improvement. Kinluo's demonic possession. Kinluo's ghost energy began to increase rapidly. At the same time, his soul power was also increased. After the ghosts and gods devoured the sinful dead, the power they obtained was only 1/3. The remaining 70% almost all entered Kinluo's body. Such a distribution ratio, it's simply that capitalists have to sign inferior. There is no way, who let Kinluo's ghost hand be their shackles. They have to give this power. They have to give it if they don't want to. There is no autonomy. Of course, if Kinluo is willing, it is not impossible to absorb 90% of the power, but that really takes a lot of effort. Kinluo is too lazy to toss. The 20% of power is a reward for the hard work of the ghosts and gods. After all, if you want the horse to run, you still have to feed it with grass. Among the power of Devil May Cry, the 3 skills of Ice Crystal Saya, Purgatory Demon / and Tombstone 3 Absolute Array have been completely mastered. As for going further, there is definitely no hope for the time being, because if you take one step closer, it will be the realm of the Second Awakening. Do you want to comprehend the Second Awakening with thousands of undead? The Second Awakening is too worthless, and affected by the strength of the soul. The power of fluctuations has also made great progress in this wave. The Ice Extreme Wave-Breaking Sword has been completely controlled, and the Extreme Wave-Breaking Sword was barely controlled in his hand at the moment when it devoured all the undead. The Thunder God's Breath has also made great progress, and it has probably completed 2/5 of the control, and it is still in the state of continuous comprehension. If nothing unexpected happens, he will be able to completely complete the comprehension in half a year at most. But Kinlawo will definitely not wait for half a year. With the sweetness of devouring the sinful undead this time, Kinlawo's desire for hell has definitely reached a new height. When he stabilizes all his current strength, it will be time for him to go to hell. Anyway, now he has the Ghost Rider as his younger brother, so he doesn't have to worry about going to hell. Compared with Azure and Devil May Cry, the growth of Berserker and Sword Soul is much slower. There is no way. These two powers are strength type, and the enhancement of the soul has some impact on them, but the impact will definitely not be great. This also led to the fact that the skills of the Berserker series only reached the previous soul-destroying hand, and the Blood and Chi burst is still a long way off. As for the Sword Soul series that awakened first, it is even worse. Kinlawo has only mastered half of the Extreme God Sword Art middle. Popular fall. The dream of breaking through the air and drawing the sword is even more far away. However, after he absorbs the blood and chi from Mephisto in hell, his physical strength will definitely be qualitatively improved. By then, the Berserker series will be fine, but the Sword Soul series is estimated to still be unable to master breaking through the air and drawing the sword. It can only think of other ways. Who would have thought that as the strength grew, the 4 series Ghost Sword would become biased? As the last evil undead was chopped and killed by Kazan, the undead in the entire Death Town were completely devoured. However, the disappearance of the undead did not make the Death Town feel purified. On the contrary, because of the ghosts and gods, the atmosphere of the entire Death Town became more terrifying. If an ordinary person accidentally enters here, without those strange things, under the invasion of the dark atmosphere, I am afraid it will not take long for them to go crazy. After the ghosts and gods devoured the undead, they had no intention of returning to the ghost hand. Their eyes were still circling around, and finally focused on old Carter and Johnny. Obviously, they were still unsatisfied and wanted to taste the taste of the spirit of revenge again. Feeling the gazes of the 7 ghosts and gods, old Carter and Johnny almost peed. The hellfire on their bodies involuntarily surged, and there was a trend of continuous growth. Kinlawo frowned when he saw this. No wonder these 7 ghosts and gods would backstab Jiger later. It really is a body of 100 jinn, but a rebellious bone of 99 jinn. All of you come back here, Kinlawo shouted with a gloomy face. Suddenly, the bodies of the 7 ghosts and gods froze, and then they turned around and looked at Kinlawo with eyes full of resentment and indignation. However, no matter what they thought, they could not resist the power of the ghost hand. As the runes on the ghost hand flashed, chains flew out of the ghost hand. They quickly wrapped around the ghosts and gods. Soon they were dragged into the ghost hand. After the ghosts and gods entered the body, the food residue around the ghosts and gods was also attached to Kinlawo's body. That was the unwilling obsession emitted when the soul was devoured. How terrifying the obsession emitted by thousands of souls being devoured is. For a while, Kinlawo was surrounded by black hair, and he looked like an evil ghost. Suddenly, Kinlawo's eyes turned red, and he covered his forehead and roared in pain. Seeing Kinlawo like this, for a while, everyone's face changed, especially old Carter, surrounded by flames. A shotgun appeared directly in his hand. Under the burning of hellfire, the shotgun became his unique weapon, Hell Soul Devouring Gun. Johnny also nervously took out the Hell Chain. Once Kinlawo made any unusual movements, he would control Kinlawo in the first place, although he didn't know whether he could control it. But he had to try it. He couldn't just watch Kinlawo become a demon. Pepper and Roshan were so scared that they retreated again and again. There was a bit of horror on their faces. Kinlawo's state at this time was quite scary. He was even more evil than a ghost. How could he still look like a human being? Tony's face was full of excitement. Look at him rubbing his hands. It seems that he has been waiting for a day, waiting for a long time. The mask was buckled, and the new arc reactor emitted a dazzling light. The whole person entered the combat state. Pepper and Spider-Man looked a little weird at this time. Although they were very nervous, they were more strange. With the help of observation Hulky and Spider-Sense, they could feel that although Kinlawo looked like he was attacked by some evil aura, in fact, the evil aura was only flowing outside his body and did not invade his body. The red eyes were even more playful. Suddenly, Maypark reacted. He shouted unhappily, "Kin, if you play like this again, our deal will be void." As Maypark's voice fell, Kinluo's whole body froze, and then the black aura in his body dissipated. The red eyes regained clarity. Chapter 317. Seriously speaking, it was the first time that Kinluo himself saw ghosts and gods with independent minds, except for the time with the evil god Brashu. I have to say that with these ghosts and gods behind him, it feels really overbearing, especially Kazan's little eyes full of fighting spirit and greed. The 7 ghosts stood behind Kinluo. Those undead souls who were originally only angry and sinful were like being cast a spell of immobilization at this moment. They just wandered in place, looking at the 7 ghosts and gods with fear in their eyes. You know, these sinful souls have no mind to speak of. They are just dead souls fascinated by their own sins. But even so, they still have fear of the 7 ghosts and gods. The ghosts and gods are shocked by this kind of undead creatures. Chapter 152. The feast begins, devouring the undead ghosts and gods. What are you waiting for? The feast can begin. Kinluo put his hands in his pockets with a smile on his face. This feeling is very wonderful. It's like the boss commanding countless younger brothers. A lot of cool. As I said, that year one put my hands in my pockets. I don't know what an opponent is. However, the ghosts and gods did not tease Kinluo, but just glanced at him. They still stood there, looking at the other ghosts and gods on alert. Obviously, they were all alert to others, whether they would snatch this hard-won feast. Kinluo's fake smile froze. Looking at the 7 ghosts and gods, he said unhappily, "Do you want to eat? If not, get back to me." As the runes on the ghost's hand flashed, the faces of the ghosts and gods changed one after another. Breaksiu did not look at the other ghosts and gods, but opened his big mouth and pounced on the undead who dared not move forward and were unwilling to leave. The big mouth fell from the sky, and countless sinful undead were swallowed into Breaksiu's stomach. The rest of the ghosts and gods saw such a scene. How could they sit still? The 8 immortals crossing the sea showed their magical powers and pounced on the undead. Kinluo took out a beach chair and lay on it directly. With one hand, he flipped popcorn, cola and fried chicken meal in his hand, admiring this battle of evil undeads among ghosts and gods. Old Carter, Johnny and Roshan, who were not familiar with Kinluo, were all dumbfounded at this time. They looked at Kinluo, who was in the middle of countless evil spirits. Their faces were full of black question marks. So many undeads were circling in the sky, and there were terrifying monsters devouring the undead. Faced with such a scene, don't you know what tension is? He actually took out a beach chair, popcorn and cola. At this moment, Old Carter felt that his mood was the mood he should have to deal with the undead. What the hell is Kinluo? Compared with Old Carter and others, May Parker, Spider-Man and Tony's expressions were much calmer. They have been with Kinluo for a long time. They are no longer surprised by Kinluo's coquettish operations. Instead, they secretly breathed a sigh of relief in their hearts. If Kinluo was on guard, then there would be big trouble. This was enough to prove that these seemingly terrifying undead spirits were already under his control. At this time, Old Carter discovered something. Although those undead spirits were chased like dogs by the 7 ghosts, none of them could escape from the altar. They just ran around everywhere. Old Carter carefully watched the scene in the altar and soon found a clue. Those undead spirits did not want to escape from the vicinity of the altar, but there was no way to escape. Whenever they approached the edge of the altar, they would be hit by an invisible force, which would bounce them back and prevent them from leaving at all. Originally, Old Carter thought it was some kind of barrier set up by Mephisto, but the next second he denied his idea. He knew Mephisto's power too well. If it was really the power of hell, his hellfire would react immediately. Since it was not the power of Mephisto, the owner of the mysterious barrier was obvious. Old Carter looked at the hellfire wall he had set up around him. After a struggle in his heart, he finally decided to disperse his power. Now his power was almost exhausted, and every time he used the power of the spirit of revenge, it was a life-threatening move. Just the maintenance of the firewall just now almost consumed nearly 1/3 of his life force that he had just replenished. In order to witness Mephisto's death with his own eyes, Old Carter finally decided to believe Kinluo and let go of the maintenance of the firewall. Johnny saw that old Carter stopped the transmission of power, and he also stopped. In fact, he didn't think that the firewall was useful at the beginning. Johnny had absolute confidence in Kinluo, who had abused the spirit of revenge in his body. The reason why he took action was to prevent old Carter from setting up the firewall and killing himself. Now that old Carter has given up, he naturally has no reason to maintain it. Without the firewall, Tony and others were relieved. There was no other reason. This surging firewall really affects the viewing experience a bit. Now that there is no firewall, everything is much clearer. Who do you think has devoured the most among these 7 monsters? Do you want to make a bet? Tony touched his chin and looked at the 7 ghosts with a look of expectation on his face. However, Tony's unrealistic idea only earned everyone's white eyes. Of course, the eye roll from a certain little fanboy was given secretly. By the way, he also received an internationally accepted hand gesture from Kinluo in the altar. Kinluo put away his fingers and began to concentrate on feeling the power of the ghosts and gods feeding back. It was less than 10 minutes. The evil undead had been almost wiped out by the ghosts and gods. The ghosts and gods acted so cleanly, there is no need to say much about the big guy Rashu. With the advantage of his innate big mouth, it swallowed the most undead. The second is Kazan. His sword and axe were swung almost like a tornado. It was like the sword storm of the sword master in Warcraft. Every evil undead hit by his sword and axe would howl and turn into a wisp of black smoke and merge into his body. Compared with the rest of the ghosts and gods, it was a level slower. Nether Flame Carla was similar to Plague Rakshasa. One released purple-black nether flame, and the other split into countless small mummies. No matter whether it was the dark flame or the little mummy, the only fate was to turn into black smoke. The shadow of Remnant Gja and the corrosion of Pullman were extremely simple and brutal. They turned into black and green shadows, entangled with the evil undead, and swallowed the undead in one bite. One bite. There was absolutely no second bite. Among the ghosts and gods, the most elegant one was the Frost Saya. She was wearing a blue dress and kept dancing among the evil undead. Wherever she went, the evil undead turned into ice sculptures. Kinluo discovered a strange phenomenon at this time. That is, as the evil undead were swallowed, the figures of the ghosts and gods became solid. Even if it was not so obvious, Kinluo could be sure it was indeed solid. Kinluo's heart jumped suddenly. If they could be given enough souls, could the ghosts and gods turn into entities? If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 318. The whole hell was shaking because of his rage. However, at this moment, Kinluo's mind felt an unprecedented great malice, and this malice did not seem to be in this space. Instantly, Kinluo guessed the source of this malice. He had destroyed the contract of someone's treasure, and now he wanted to eat someone's soul. It would be strange if the good man underground was not angry. Feeling the source of malice, the mind's eye started. Kinluo's eyes seemed to penetrate the space and saw the roaring Mephisto. Then Kinluo made an international gesture to him. Damn Kinluo! Mephisto angrily tore the mirror in front of him, and at the moment the mirror was broken, the connection between hell and the human world was directly disconnected. Chapter 151, Reactions from All Sides. Domineering ghosts and gods. Damn Carter, is this the result of your guarding for hundreds of years, just to give my soul to that damn human? Carter, I will never let you go, never. Wait, this matter is not over yet. Wait, no one can seal the real Lord of Hell, not even the gods can. Mephisto stood up suddenly, his red eyes almost dripping blood. For thousands of years, even when the Saint Venganza contract was stolen by Carter, he had never been so angry. Mephisto looked at the boundless hellfire. The furious mood spread throughout the hell, and countless demons and evil spirits were affected by it at this moment. The whole hell became boiling. Camardage. Ancient One looked at the two mirror images in front of him. One was the impotent and furious Mephisto, the other was Kinluo and the ghosts and gods behind him. Ancient One's expression was extremely serious, and his eyes were even more solemn. Endless years have almost wiped out her emotions. But when she saw the ghosts and gods, she still felt shocked and puzzled. She didn't expect that the power hidden in Kinlawo would be so terrifying. What she can see is much farther than ordinary big guys, so Guyi knows more about the horror of ghosts and gods. The moment she saw these ghosts and gods, the future she predicted quietly changed. She even saw a future that she absolutely didn't want to see. Originally, Guyi planned to talk to Kinlawo again after a while. Now, she feels that she can't wait any longer. Slowly standing up, Guyi walked towards the outside of the temple. At this time, Guyi's disciples were practicing magic under the leadership of the wizard Mordo. "Master, is there any problem in the world again?" Mordo saw Guyi's solemn expression. His heart couldn't help but tighten. The whole person became nervous. The other disciples also put down the magic circle in their hands and cast their eyes over. Recently, the whole Kamartage has been a little panic. There is no way. Guyi has been doing too much recently. Ancient One is the god of Kamartage. Everyone's faith is in her. Her every move definitely affects the hearts of the people of Kamartage. Seeing the reactions of her disciples, Ancient One frowned slightly. "You should not focus on me, but on yourselves. I just want to find a young man to chat with." Although Ancient One said this to Mordo, his voice reached the ears of every apprentice. For a moment, all the magic apprentices showed a look of shame on their faces, lowered their heads, and began their own research on magic. "Sorry, Supreme Sorcerer, we are too nervous." Mordo also looked at Ancient One with a face full of shame and said. Ancient One's expression eased slightly. "Okay, you should also pay attention. Recently, Cassilios has come out of the dark dimension. His target is likely to be the Holy Temple. Pay attention to protect these magic apprentices. They don't have much resistance to the darkness." Hearing this name, Mordo's face suddenly changed wildly, and his ashamed eyes turned into a strong murderous intent and vigilance. He looked at Ancient One with a determined look and said, "Master Supreme, please rest assured, before I die, the Holy Temple will never be in any danger." Hearing this, Ancient One's heart was in turmoil. Of course, this wave was not moved, but angry. If it weren't for his status, Ancient One really wanted to slap Mordo twice. Wake up his stupid head and let him distinguish the key points. "Mordo, the Holy Temple is not such a sacred place. It's just where we live. It's just a place for practice. As long as these people are here, any place can be a holy temple. Do you understand? You have to remember, people are the most important." "I don't want you to say that again." Hearing Ancient One's reprimand, Mordo was extremely nervous. He quickly lowered his head and said seriously, "Yes, Master Supreme. I will follow your teachings." Alas, Ancient One sighed softly. Mordo was like this, and she really had no way to deal with it. Perhaps it was because of this that he would collapse mentally when he learned that he had absorbed the power of darkness in the future. Sparks flashed in Ancient One's hands, and the space portal appeared in front of him. With one step, the whole person disappeared in Kamartage. Only Mordo, who was full of shame and fanaticism, was left. Asgard. Odin stared at the earth, his eyes full of vigilance and tension. Even though he had overestimated Kinlawo countless times, but Odin found that he really underestimated the other party. What kind of existence are those 7 figures? How could they have such power? Basically, each one is above him. As the saying goes, a glimpse of the whole picture is only a glimpse of a part. In Odin's eyes, he can naturally see how high the gold content of the ghosts and gods is. Now he just hopes that his family will not mess with this ignorant human, especially the third child. That adopted little ghost, Loki. He is the one who is most likely to provoke Kinlawo, and Loki is probably full of hatred for Kinlawo now. I hope he won't be blinded by the power of the gem. Similarly, Odin has a new plan in his mind at this time, or a conspiracy. His time is running out. Hela is about to be liberated. If Hela appears on the earth, just happens to appear in front of Kinlawo, or the people around Kinlawo, in that way, perhaps many problems can be solved. Maybe Ragnarok will not be triggered because of this. Odin's fingers kept tapping on the eternal spear, and his eyes flashed with the unique light of the old yin coin. Death Town. After Kinlawo made the international universal gesture, he turned around and looked at the ghosts and gods. Chapter 319, Tony shrugged his shoulders and spoke as if he saw through everything. What's so difficult about this? Luo Shan didn't understand. Tony makes sense. Kin's character is likely to do such a thing. May Parker's expression was somewhat helpless. Aunt Mai is right. Spider-Man nodded in agreement, looking at Tony, May Parker and Spider-Man. Everyone just felt confused. There seemed to be countless black lines falling on the skull face of old Carter. However, at this moment, a scene that made everyone drop their jaws happened. QNMD. Kin Luo cursed loudly, and swung his sword to cut the St. Venganza contract into pieces. Chapter 150 Ghosts and Gods. Incompetent Rage Boom. As the contract was chopped by Kin Luo, the entire altar trembled, a stream of evil aura emanated, and black smoke filled the sky. Back off, be careful of those evil spirits, it will be very troublesome if you are contaminated. Old Carter came back to his senses, suppressed the shock in his heart, opened his arms, and the hellfire blocked all the surroundings, forming a closed wall of fire. And May Park and others were also forced back more than 10 meters by the high temperature. Old Carter looked at the man standing in the middle of the altar. It seemed that 10,000 grass mud horses were galloping through his heart. He had imagined countless times that the contract was read by someone, but he never thought that Kin Luo's way of canceling the contract would be to tear up the contract. Not to mention ordinary people, even ordinary demons can't do this. After all, this Saint Venganza contract was created by Mephisto himself and contains extraordinary power. Besides, once the contract is torn up, it will directly anger the thousands of sinful undead souls. The person who originally recited the contract will merge with these sinful souls. Now it is estimated that those sinful souls just want to tear up the person who tore up the contract. In short, destroying the contract to release the sinful soul is generally never going to happen. But it happened in front of everyone. Johnny came back to his senses at this time, stretched out his hand, and the hellfire rushed out, reinforcing the surrounding firewall a little more. A woo times, and as the black smoke became thicker, countless piercing howls suddenly sounded. This is the scream of the undead, and it also represents the anger of the undead. Countless undead rushed out of the coffins and corpses and rushed straight towards Kin Luo. Like a black tide, the densely packed souls make people feel numb at a glance. It is definitely a nightmare for people with trypophobia. However, Kin Luo looked at those sinful souls, and his eyes lit up. It was as if he saw some delicious food. Licking his dry lips, Kin Luo knocked on the ghost hand. You guys, it's time to eat. As Kin Luo's voice fell, the 7 ghost and god marks on the ghost hand began to light up. Kazan holding a knife and axe, Kajia with tattoos and muscles all over his body, the monster-like Pullman glowing green, the elegant and beautiful Saya in the ice blue robe, the mummy-like Rakshasa, the strange skeleton burning with dark purple dark flames, the phantom of Brashu, which was only a giant. The phantoms of ghosts and gods emerged from the mark one by one, looking both spectacular and domineering, but compared to the thousands of sinful souls, the number seemed a little scarce. To be honest, quantity can make up for quality, but it also depends on what quality. Only Johnny and Old Carter could feel the terrifying power emitted by the phantoms of ghosts and gods, especially the power of Brashu and Kazan. They couldn't help but tremble. How much the revenge spirit in Johnny's body wanted to control the body at this time, so as to rush to the area that was already so evil that it couldn't be more evil, and complete his purification of the evil double pupils. Unfortunately, the breath of the ghosts and gods was too strong, and the pressure even penetrated Johnny's soul and suppressed the revenge spirit in his body. This is what the evil power in Kin Luo's body looks like. It's really shocking. A trembling voice came out of Old Carter's mouth, and the flames in his eyes jumped violently. Old Carter has no spirit of revenge, only residual power, so his current state is not as good as Johnny. There is even a feeling of being suppressed back to his original form. However, he tried his best to resist the pressure from ghosts and gods, otherwise, the blocked firewall would have disappeared now. Now Old Carter is no longer worried about whether the evil spirit will escape and cause trouble to the world. Now he is worried whether Kin Luo can really control these 7 evil beings. Once out of control, it will not be as simple as purgatory on earth. It is estimated that the world will no longer exist. and old Carter even suspects that the entire universe will sink into the hands of these 7 terrifying beings. In hell. In fact, at the moment when the Saint Venganza contract was destroyed, Mephisto had already sensed it. It was just that he had experienced the last witch heart demon. Mephisto was completely targeted by many big guys, especially Guyi. She directly used space magic to block the entire hell. Now the connection between hell and the outside world is almost isolated. Therefore, it is not an easy thing for Mephisto to watch the human world. Now he has barely opened a gap between the human world and hell, and has discovered the changes in the town of death. As a result, he saw an extremely bad scene. It never thought that the person who destroyed the contract of Saint Venganza was Kinluo, whom he hated the most. What shocked it even more was the 7 ghosts and gods. Mephisto waited for the phantoms of Kazan and Brashu, almost biting his back teeth and roaring, "Asshole, where did that damn human get these horrible guys from? Even I feel scared." And the skeleton with purple flames. Why is his hell breath so strong? Even if the 7 ghosts and gods are phantoms, the pressure they bring to Mephisto is huge. It makes him feel that his status will be lost at any time. Suddenly 2 flames flashed. Mephisto set his sights on old Carter and Johnny. In an instant, Mephisto felt his mentality explode again. Losing the contract of Saint Venganza is fine, and Kinluo's power to shake his Lord of Hell is terrifying enough. Why is Johnny now hanging out with the traitor old Carter? Did the strongest wage earner betray him again? Thinking of the scene where he schemed to cause a conflict between Kinluo and the Ghost Rider, now Mephisto really wants to slap himself a few times. What does it mean to shoot oneself in the foot? Mephisto is the one who loses both the wife and the army. Damn Carter. Damn Ghost Rider. You bunch of traitors. Doomed traitors. I won't let you go. I will never let you go. Mephisto roared crazily. Chapter 320. This environment is definitely a place for raising corpses. A cradle for zombies, even if there are no zombies in this world. But if someone has a brain injury and buries their ancestors here, I am afraid that their souls will not rest in peace. Except for Kinluo and old Carter, everyone's faces became nervous at this time. Of course, Tony and Johnny's nervousness is invisible to others, but Kinluo can feel the change in their breath, so they are also in a state of tension. The area of the wetland is not small. Old Carter's speed began to slow down here, so it took the same time to cross this wetland as when he came. With the disappearance of the woods and wetlands, everyone finally came to the town of death. The whole town seems to reveal a weird and terrifying atmosphere, except for the occasional sound of crows. There is no other sound. Silence and weirdness are the first impressions that this town brings to people. The visual sense of horror movies is full. The buildings in the town are also very strange, and they are definitely not buildings that normal humans can think of. Everyone has no desire to visit such a weird place. Even the excitement was completely lost with the changes in the environment. People like Luo Shan and Zhao Lajiao have already regretted coming here. Chapter 149. The Restless Ghosts and Gods. The unspeakable contract for others. The dark atmosphere around them makes them very uncomfortable, but Kinluo feels like a fish in water. His breathing has become much smoother, especially the ghost hand. The 7 ghosts and gods have some reactions at this time. As everyone goes deeper and deeper, the dark atmosphere becomes thicker and thicker. Kinluo can clearly feel the joy coming from the 7 ghosts and gods. The most central location is an existence similar to the ancient Roman Colosseum. You can vaguely see corpses and coffins stacked in this building. The weirdness and horror level directly increased by a level. At this time, old Carter stopped completely. He turned over and got off the horse, took out the Saint Venganza contract from the arms of his windbreaker and handed it to Kinluo. Now I ask you one last time, are you sure you want to open this contract and release those sinful undead souls? If you regret it now, it's still not too late. Otherwise, the world may become purgatory because of your actions. Perhaps it was because of the transformation. Old Carter's voice became low and hoarse, and his words seemed to have a kind of magic that could hit people's hearts directly. But these were of no use to Kinluo. Don't worry, the world will not become purgatory, and these thousands of sinful souls will no longer exist in the future. Kinluo smiled, without the slightest hesitation, and directly grabbed the Saint Venganza contract in his hand. Looking at the exquisite contract scroll, the fire in old Carter's eyes flickered. There was an inexplicable feeling in his heart. It has been hundreds of years, and he can't remember how many years it has been since he stole the Saint Fanganza contract from Mephisto. Over the years, countless hellish ghosts have wanted to snatch this contract to gain powerful power. In the end, all of them were destroyed by the hellfire of old Carter. It was also because of this contract that he lost many things. In the end, he had to choose to stay away from the crowd and build a small cemetery in the suburbs to bury his relatives and friends in the cemetery. Many of the graves did not even have a cenotaph, just a name on the tombstone. And today, he handed the contract to Kinluo, and hundreds of years of protection came to an end. Inexplicably, old Carter felt like he had taken off the shackles, and the whole person was relieved. Of course, now is not the time to relax completely. If the worst happens, then old Carter can only burn himself and sacrifice his soul, so as to temporarily seal this land. This is also the plan he thought of when he came. In short, we must not let these thousands of sinful souls wreak havoc in the world. What he said just now is not alarmist. If these sinful souls are really allowed to flow into the world, the impact caused is not something that can be described as a disaster. Kinluo smiled at everyone, and then strode into the center of the arena. In fact, it is not accurate to say that this is an arena. Relatively speaking, this place is more like an altar. Kinluo has walked to the center of the altar at this time. May Parker and others stared at Kinluo nervously outside the altar more than 500 meters away. Before coming, all those who were familiar with Kinluo had absolute confidence in him. But now the scenes, plus the words of old Carter, let their solid information be shaken a little. This place is too weird. Kinluo picked up the Saint Van Gogh contract and slowly opened it. On the white leather contract, there were some symbols written in blood that Kinluo could not understand. As the contract was opened, the whole altar began to react. All the coffins and mummies began to tremble slightly, and the dark breath instantly increased by more than 10 times. The 7 ghosts and gods were stimulated by this breath and became anxious. They wanted to rush out of Kinluo's ghost hand directly to devour the dark breath around them. Unfortunately, they couldn't do it. Kinluo's mind moved, and he directly suppressed the restless emotions of the ghosts and gods. Feeling the changes in the ghosts and gods, Kinluo felt a little annoyed. It seems that the power of the soul killer is still not enough to deter these greedy ghosts and gods. If you want to completely suppress them, you probably have to break through to the level of the Dark Monarch. By that time, Kinluo will be the king of all ghosts, and no matter how unruly the 7 ghosts and gods are, they will have to obey Kinluo and let him mobilize them, instead of being like a rebel like now. Kinluo's fingers passed over those blood words. Suddenly, those blood words seemed to come alive, and the weird and incomprehensible symbols gradually turned into characters that Kinluo could understand. What is written on it? The sleeping sinful undead, in the name of the Lord of Hell, I will wake you up. In short, the text above is very second year, and in the end it will be in the name of Mephisto. Kinluo really disliked it and was even more reluctant to read it. What's more, his relatives and friends were all watching from the outside. If he really read it, it would be a large-scale social death scene. And the people on the outside saw Kinluo open the scroll. Everyone's heart was in their throat, and they looked at Kinluo nervously. But seeing that Kinluo did not make any other moves after opening the scroll, everyone couldn't help but feel a little confused. Is there something wrong with the Saint Fanganza contract? Brother Kin was confused by the power of the contract. Is it Mephisto's conspiracy? Johnny's voice that was not like the human world sounded, and his words were full of worry. No, Kinluo's eyes are clear, and I can be sure that there is no other special power in this contract. Otherwise I would not have guarded it safely for hundreds of years. Old Carter shook his head decisively, denying Johnny's guess. Why is that? Is there a problem with the location, or Kinluo doesn't recognize the words on it? Little Pepper said with some doubts. No, the location is definitely correct, and after the scroll is opened, the power inside will project the contents of the contract on it into the mind of the person who opens the contract. Old Carter still shook his head to deny. Then there is only one possibility. It is probably the things recorded in the Saint Fanganza contract that make Kinluo difficult to speak. After all, We are all present. If the content of the contract is true, he will not say it in public. Chapter 321. Johnny sat on his motorcycle and did not invite Luo Shan to get on. There was no way. Now that he had transformed, he could not control his own power at all. If he was not careful, Luo Shan might have to start the feast. So Luo Shan had to go with King Luo. Swish! Old Carter blew a loud whistle. Tap, 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 tap. Suddenly, the sound of horseshoes fell to the ground sounded, and a majestic tall horse ran from behind and stalked beside Old Carter. Old Carter jumped on the horse and rode on the horse's back, matched with his cowboy clothes. It was so handsome. King Luo was sure that this old man was definitely a heartthrob when he was young. Tony looked at the handsome Old Carter and made a decision in his heart. I have to buy a good horse to play with when I go back, and I will ride a horse when I go out in the future. What a famous car! It's so weak. If a driver and bodyguard who are about to be depressed knew Tony's decision at this time, I'm afraid they would cry directly in the toilet. Old Carter, the distance to Death Town is not that close. Can you keep up with us? Young man Johnny looked at Old Carter on horseback, his face full of worry. Chapter 148. The most handsome transformation. Death Town. Johnny's words came out. Everyone nodded in agreement. The horse is handsome, but the speed is a flaw. Normally, it can't compare to vehicles like motorcycles, not to mention the Hellfire motorcycle and Iron Man's armor. King Luo saw the look of everyone and couldn't help but shook his head secretly. Young people, you are all too young. Don't you know that this old man is the Ghost Rider of the previous generation? In all aspects of transformation in Marvel, this old man is second to none, and few people dared to claim to be the first. Facing the doubts of everyone, Old Carter smiled slightly. He picked up his cowboy hat and slowly put it on his head. This is my last transformation, Johnny. You will be the only Ghost Rider in the world from now on. Johnny didn't understand what Old Carter meant. He looked at Old Carter with a confused face. However, at this moment, Old Carter slightly pushed down the brim of his hat. Boom! The flames of hell shot up into the sky, and Old Carter completed the transformation into the Ghost Rider in an instant. The handsome cowboy hat and leather windbreaker, as well as the Hellfire skeleton warhorse under his crotch. It was really handsome. This made Old Carter just pretend to be full. OMG! Times and people exclaimed. Johnny's face became a little hot. It was really a bit too embarrassing. There is no need to say more about the three women including May Parker. Standard surprise action, covering his mouth with both hands, eyes wide open. The most exciting expression at this time must be Tony. Tony is a person who can't tolerate others pretending to be cool in front of him. If he couldn't beat the last person who pretended to be cool, he would have dealt with him long ago. But now someone pretended to be cool in front of him and he had no way to deal with it. Tony had to admit that he was really impressed by Old Carter. That flame skeleton warhorse was really cool. Tony hoped to get such a warhorse in his heart. Unfortunately, his wish is doomed to fail. As for Spider-Man's reaction, there was nothing much to say. In addition to constantly shouting out the quintessence of Dragon Country, fuck, he has been completely immersed in the transformation. King Luo couldn't help but feel amazed at this time, even though he had known about Old Carter's super handsome transformation for a long time. But the gap between the screen and reality is still quite large, so large that it's ridiculous. Old Carter, you are really surprising. Johnny looked at Old Carter and said awkwardly. Old Carter didn't say anything, but the corners of the skeleton's mouth slightly raised, revealing a smile with a hint of Dragon King's breath, and nodded slightly at Johnny. Who brothers, we are ready to go. Boom! Johnny finished speaking, and suddenly twisted the throttle, and a lot of hell flames gushed out, and his whole body and the motorcycle were all covered by hell flames. Directly transformed into the Ghost Rider. It can be seen that Johnny is in a very good state this time, and he is not out of control or anything. The body is completely dominated by him. With such a good example, Johnny's transformation seemed a bit disappointing. Tony silently took out a golden red metal suitcase. After buckling it on his body, he completed the Iron Man costume change. Perhaps it was because of the new arc reactor that was replaced in advance. The suitcase transformation was much faster than before, and it didn't look as simple as before. The suitcase iron suit can be regarded as the worst suit after Tony Mark III. The attack method was so simple, but now it is much better. At least it has a protective shield and an arc pulse cannon to fill the appearance. Sister Mai, you guys should also use the flying sword. We should set off, Kinluo said, and the ancient dagger in his hand turned directly into a huge flying sword. Just like the reason why there are more people this time, Kinluo transformed the ancient dagger into a particularly large one. It is not inferior to a small passenger plane. Others have seen Kinluo's flying sword a long time ago. It was the first time for Luo Shan. However, after seeing so many transformations, Luo Shan was a little numb at this time. With the help of May Park, he successfully stood on the flying sword. In this way, everyone set out for the town of death. The two evil ghost knights opened the way in front, and Kinluo's flying sword was in the middle. Finally, Tony was trying to catch up with the thrusters. In fact, Tony's speed was not slow, but the breath of the two evil ghost knights was too violent, except for Kinluo's flying sword, which was protected by the sword energy. All other creatures or things would be impacted by the evil ghost knight. It is no exaggeration to say that wherever the two knights went, they really left no one alive. I don't know how many rattlesnakes and lizards were burned to ashes by the residual heat of the hellfire. At first, Tony wanted to rush to the front, but after a while, he couldn't bear the terrible high temperature. He decisively chose to retreat behind Kinluo's flying sword to avoid the terrible high temperature. It took about 10 minutes to fly. Everyone came to the outskirts of the town of death. This is a large wetland. The surroundings are pitch black, and the moonlight is basically blocked by those strange and twisted trees. The dark atmosphere is extremely heavy, making people feel very uncomfortable. It is no exaggeration to say that this is the Marvel world. If it is changed to the world of Uncle Jiu or Xianxia. Chapter 322. Tony suppressed his excitement. He asked Jarvis to start various tests on the new arc reactor. The test results came out soon. The power of the new arc reactor, both in terms of stability and energy storage, far exceeded the original arc reactor. Tony can now use the shield and arc pulse cannon without worrying about risking his death as he originally thought. He finally stood up. Moreover, the energy contained in it is very gentle and stable. Not only will it not erode Tony's body, but it will also have certain benefits for his body. Tony couldn't wait to install the new arc reactor on himself. Feeling the gentle power emanating from it, Tony couldn't help but shout, "Awesome, Mr. Tony! Congratulations on your rebirth. I think we should wash up and have a good sleep." The cumin smell emitted when Tony waved his arms woke Ethan up from his excitement. He covered his nose and looked at Tony with a serious face and said. Tony sniffed his nose when he heard the words, then his face suddenly changed. "I think you are right." After throwing down these words, Tony rushed out of the studio and plunged into the bathroom. Soon Ethan and Tony, wearing bathrobes, came out. The two looked at each other and felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity. After Tony arranged Ethan to stay in the guest room, he soon fell into a deep sleep lying on the comfortable big bed. He finally survived. Finally, he didn't have to worry about whether he would die one day. An unprecedented sense of relief enveloped his heart, and he soon fell into a deep sleep. Tony Stark was officially reborn. Chapter 147. Gathered together and ready to go. Midnight. The originally peaceful cemetery was unusually lively today. The small hut was almost full of people. Johnny and his girlfriend Roxanne, Tony and Pepper, Kinluo, May Parker and Spider-Man, and the century-old bachelor Old Carter. Looking at these young people who were talking happily in front of him, Old Carter felt his temples throbbing. If he remembered correctly, today should be the day to release the thousands of undead souls in the St. Venganza contract, not a party. Why are there so many people? Kinluo was also helpless at this time. Originally, he only planned to bring May Parker. He didn't even plan to bring Pepper. But who would have thought that Pepper not only came, but also brought the new student Tony? Even if it weren't for Kinluo's strong request and danger warning, Ethan and Happy would not have come. It would have been too lively. As for Spider-Man, this guy actually burst into the seeds and completed the learning task ahead of time just to watch. Kinluo was surprised at this, and couldn't help but sigh. The people's potential is indeed infinite. If he doesn't force it, God knows how much potential he can burst out. As for Johnny and Roxanne, That's not something Kinlawo can control. Today, Johnny's girlfriend Roxanne felt that she was about to faint from happiness. Among the crowd, she was the most active. As a reporter, whether it is Tony or Pepper, or Kinlawo and Spider-Man, they were all people she would never dare to contact. Unexpectedly, because of Johnny, she could meet so many powerful people. It would be strange if she wasn't excited, especially Kinlawo and Spider-Man. Luo Shan would have a chance to see Tony and his superhero couple from afar. Kinlawo and Spider-Man were both superheroes that were hard to find. Facing Luo Shan's enthusiasm, everyone did not resist at all, but cooperated very well to answer some of her questions. Johnny was embarrassed for a while, and wanted to pull Luo Shan back several times, but after seeing her excited face, he finally gave up the idea. He owed Luo Shan enough, and now she could do whatever she wanted. Face is something that is not a problem as long as you don't want it. What surprised Kinlawo was that Tony was actually half a fan of Johnny. The two actually knew each other. Tony's eyes lit up when he saw Johnny. He was full of praise for his death motorcycle stunt. Johnny's personality has changed a lot. Facing Tony's praise, he waved his hands repeatedly, saying that it was all the credit of the spirit of vengeance. Otherwise, if he had been so suicidal, the grass on his grave would have been several meters high. Johnny rubbed his temples involuntarily. As night fell, the Ghost Rider began to get agitated again, making him feel a little uncomfortable. Fortunately, due to Kinlawo's presence, it was not as agitated as before, and Johnny could barely control it. Everyone, it should be about time. I think we should set off. Old Carter stood up and took the cowboy hat beside him. In fact, there was enough time, but the old man couldn't stand the 3 servings of dog food. As for the other little single dog, he had already gotten used to it. 2 servings of dog food was enough, and so was 3 servings of dog food. There was no difference. Everyone stood up after hearing this, with some anticipation and excitement on their faces. Even Kinlawo couldn't help rubbing his hands, and his lips were slightly dry. Thousands of evil dead souls are about to be absorbed by their own ghosts and gods and turned into their own power. Just thinking about it makes me a little excited. Kinlawo couldn't help but sigh again. Mephisto, good man. Looking at the shining eyes of those people in front of him, old Carter couldn't help but frown, especially when he looked at Pepper and Roxanne. His brows frowned even tighter. Ladies, the Death Town is a little dangerous, and the evil atmosphere is strong. If you go, it may be a little dangerous, old Carter said with a serious face. Having said that, but old Carter is more worried about the worst result. If thousands of dead souls get out of control, it may be difficult to protect so many people with his remaining body. Roxanne and Pepper's faces fell when they heard this. They didn't want to be expelled from the team. And Spider-Man looked at May Parker with some surprise. Logically speaking, his Aunt May shouldn't be in danger too. Why didn't the old man remind her? Spider-Man still doesn't know that his Aunt May is no longer the same as before. But old Carter can easily feel May Parker's strong physique and the power contained in his body. Don't worry, old Carter, I'll take care of everything. Just let them follow. Besides, there are so many people. Kinlawo smiled and persuaded. Hearing this, old Carter looked at May Parker and others, and finally nodded and agreed. In fact, when old Carter saw that there were many people with extraordinary powers among Kinlawo and others, he was also shocked. He didn't expect that there were so many people with special powers around Kinlawo. Even if they were taken alone, they would not be weaker than his descendants. In an instant, he suddenly felt that the Ghost Rider was really nothing. Yes, ×2. Seeing that, old Carter agreed. Pepper and Roshan were immediately excited. Everyone came to the gate of the cemetery. Chapter 323. Pepper said, looking at Kinlawo with a little resentment. No way. In order to survive, he can only fight like this, but I think it will be soon. After all, Tony is a genius. The new element has been found and it is only a matter of time to create it. Kinlawo shrugged his shoulders and said, alas yes, in order to survive. Pepper took a big gulp of wine, and her face was still a bit sad. There have been a lot of things in Stark Industries recently, which really overwhelmed her. That Hammer Industries is very dishonest, just like a wild wolf, always staring at Stark Industries, ready to bite off a piece of fat at any time. How are you handling your affairs? May Parker looked at Kinlaw and asked. It's okay, someone helped me complete what I wanted to do, and I also got some unexpected gains. Kinlaw said, sitting on the sofa, picked up the wine glass and talked about old Carter and Johnny and the St. Van Gogh contract, all said out. Anyway, I'm free. When the two women heard Kinlaw's experience, their faces were so excited and wonderful. It was as if he had seen the Ghost Rider fight the wizard with his own eyes. He listened to it completely like a storytelling. Kin, I want to go with you in the evening. Thousands of evil spirits. That scene is spectacular to think about. May Parker looked at Kinlaw with a sharp gaze, his face full of excitement. I want to go too, Little Pepper echoed on the side. Her eyes were also frighteningly bright. Seeing this, Kinlaw couldn't help but twitch the corners of his mouth, secretly cursing himself for being cheap and bragging for no reason. Kin, if you promise me, I will also agree to your request for high-speed rotating three-point style. May Parker saw that Kinlaw was a little hesitant, and immediately released a killer move, and he threw a fierce eyebrow at Kinlaw. Kinlaw only felt his heart pounding. Damn, who can withstand such conditions? So Kinlaw nodded decisively and agreed. Little Pepper on the side blushed with shame, and glanced at Kinlaw and May Parker fiercely. Can such a thing be said in front of outsiders? I turned off the lights. Brother Kin, you are back. At this time, Spider-Man came out rubbing his sleepy eyes. The moment he saw Spider-Man, Kinlaw's eyes flashed. He couldn't help but think of the pain when his sins were burned by the fire of judgment. Hunting time. Chapter 146. Sinful and Tony's New Life. Spider-Man felt Kinlaw's aggressive gaze. He suddenly felt a shock all over his body. He was already holding his urine, and he almost wet his pants directly. Brother Kin, have I offended you recently? Why do you look at me with such a cannibalistic look? Spider-Man looked at Kinlaw, and said with a smile that was uglier than crying, You kid, what nonsense are you talking about? I just want to care about you. I was too busy some time ago and left you with Tony. You know, I still miss you very much. How are you recently? Are you tired of doing exercises? You must pay attention to the combination of work and rest, Kinlaw said earnestly with a kind smile on his face. Spider-Man was really about to cry now, and his legs began to tremble unconsciously. Kinlaw rarely spoke to him in such a soft voice, even if he was pretending. Spider-Man's brain was surprisingly active at this moment, and everything that might offend Kinlaw went through his mind. I'm sorry, Brother Kin. I shouldn't have added water to your wine and sprinkled wall dust. Spider-Man gritted his teeth and decided to admit it first. At least he could die with a clear mind. Hearing this, not only Kinlaw was stunned, even May Parker and Pepper, who were watching the show, were stunned when they looked at the wine glasses in their hands. The expressions on their faces were so wonderful, they never thought that they could eat the melon. Kinlaw didn't even expect there would be an unexpected surprise. He said that the taste of the wine has become a little lighter recently. Originally, he thought it was the evaporation of the alcohol, but he didn't expect that the case would be solved directly. It doesn't matter, the rebellious period has arrived. It's normal to do some stupid things, but Peter, you are a man, and men must be prepared to bear the consequences when they do things. Kinlaw looked at Spider-Man, with a more friendly smile on his face. Brother Kin, what do you think the consequences should be for me? Hearing Spider-Man's words, Kinlaw made an okay gesture. 3 times? No problem. Spider-Man breathed a sigh of relief, and his expression became a little more relaxed. Haha. 10 times in 3 days. If you can't finish it, you can practice with me alone for 3 days. Kinlaw sneered, retracted his hand, and squeezed it with a crackling sound. Gulp. Spider-Man swallowed his saliva, and looked at May Parker and Pepper with a look of help on his face. However, after he saw the 2 cold and beautiful faces and the bottle of wine on the table, he decisively gave up the idea of help. If he asked for help, it might be even worse. He walked towards the bathroom in a daze. But just when he was about to enter the bathroom, it seemed that he remembered something, turned his head and looked at Kinlaw and said, Brother Kin, can the 3rd day be postponed? Harry is having a birthday party and I don't want to miss it. Kinlaw raised his eyebrows. Harry's birthday seemed to be the time when Norman Osborn completely turned into the Green Goblin. He has been too busy recently and actually forgot about the Green Goblin. Okay, but you have to add one more day. Kinluo nodded and agreed. Alas, Spider-Man nodded bitterly, opened the door and walked into the bathroom. Kinluo looked at Spider-Man's back and felt that he was really sinful. I wonder if the Eye of Judgment can be burned for a longer time next time. In Tony's studio. Ethan and Tony now look 3/4 like they did in the Ten Commandments gang. During this period of time, they kept researching new elements. They almost studied when they woke up and slept when they were tired. Personal hygiene was thrown behind their minds. Don't say it. In this state, the two of them are surprisingly feeling. I can't help but think of that not-so-good black memory. After countless experiments, the new element was finally completely solved. Now is the last experiment. Ethan and Tony looked at the robotic arm nervously. I saw a small beam of blue light shooting out from the robotic arm, impact on a triangular special material. In an instant, the two people's clenched fists became tighter. They have tested the power of this laser countless times. It is not an exaggeration to say that it can cut everything. Even Tony's armor material is no different from tofu in front of this laser. It will be cut cleanly. Now is the most difficult step of the new element. However, it turns out that Tony and Ethan's efforts during this period have not been in vain. I saw that after the blue laser fell on the triangular device, it did not cut it open, but merged into the material. Soon the triangular device absorbed all the lasers and lit up a dazzling blue light. In comparison, Tony's arc reactor on his chest dimmed a lot. As the last trace of laser merged into it, the power of the triangular device reached saturation. Perfect. It's really perfect. It's simply God's creation. Ethan looked at the new arc reactor, and the stubble on his face trembled with his muscles. The whole person was extremely excited. Chapter 324. The Devil May Cry and Azura's skills that had not been used for a long time began to be understood. The perception of the breath of the Thunder God also improved a lot. There are also the power of fluctuations, the power of Devil May Cry, and so on. In short, the benefits of the soul power improvement are countless. Kinluo opened his eyes, and his eyes looked at old Carter like lightning. He gasped for breath, and his old voice was as hoarse as the sound of breaking wind. His forehead was full of sweat. He trembled and picked up the kettle, and didn't care about his image. He started to drink water. Kinluo frowned when he saw this. At this time, old Carter's physical condition was really not good. Just one Eye of Judgment reduced his vitality. Originally, judging from his vitality, this old man could live for at least 3 to 5 years. Now with this little vitality, old Carter can live 1 more year. Kinluo shook his head, and his mind moved. A large amount of blood and energy gathered, forming a red streamer that directly entered old Carter's body. It was the blood and chi diversion in the Berserker system. Old Carter had brought him great benefits, so he gave him a return. Replenishing his vitality was also a repayment. Anyway, the vitality Kinluo gained from Mephisto was a terrifying number. As the blood and chi entered his body, old Carter's face became ruddy at a speed visible to the naked eye. His vitality was replenished in large quantities, but this was only temporary. Old Carter's body was no longer good. If the human body was a water tank and vitality was water, old Carter's old water tank was already dilapidated, and even more water would flow out from the cracks. Even if Kinluo filled him with water now, it would only allow him to live for 3 to 5 more years at most. By then, his body would completely lose its vitality. But for old Carter, it was enough, and it was a complete surprise. What a magical power. Thank you. The recovered old Carter bowed slightly to Kinluo, and said solemnly, looking at Kinluo with a soft look in his eyes, even softer than Johnny. Maybe it was because he was too soft-hearted or because Kinluo passed the Eye of Judgment. Even though he couldn't believe it, everything in the Eye of Judgment was going on normally. So old Carter could only believe that Kinluo was a good person. Old Carter has always been the most tolerant of good people. But Kinluo's next sentence broke his defense directly. Kinluo grinned, revealing 2 rows of white teeth. Old Mr. Carter, are you okay? I think my sins are definitely not as simple as they seem. Do you want to do it again later? Puff. Old Carter spurted out a mouthful of water, his soft eyes froze, replaced by a look like a lunatic. And Johnny's eyes looking at Kinlawo at this time were also very strange. He asked cautiously, "Brother Kin, do you have any special hobbies?" "Get out, I don't have what you have. I'm not worried that the sins I bear are too clear." Old Mr. Carter, "Don't agree. What if you don't give me the contract?" Kinlawo glared at Johnny, then turned his gaze to old Carter and said, "You said so, right? I think I should accept another trial. There will definitely be missed sins that will be uncovered. Don't worry, I can do it. I can withstand it." Feeling Kinlawo's fiery gaze, old Carter's mouth began to twitch wildly, and the corners of his eyes trembled involuntarily. He couldn't help but curse in his heart. Is this what he said? Can you withstand it? I can't withstand it. One more time and I can rest in peace directly. However, even with a storm in his heart, old Carter still looked like a kind old man on the surface. Of course, the premise is that his facial muscles no longer tremble. Chapter 145. Wait one more day. Irresistible conditions. Young man, let's talk about the contract now, old Carter said with a smile on his face. Kinlawo nodded when he heard it, and without saying anything else, he stretched out his hand to old Carter. However, to Kinlawo's surprise, old Carter still shook his head and did not give him the contract, but put it on the table beside him. Seeing this scene, Kinlawo couldn't help but raise his eyebrows, and Johnny was also puzzled, wondering what the old man was doing. Seeing Kinlawo like this, old Carter raised the corners of his mouth slightly. "Young man, don't get me wrong. Look at the sky now. It's not suitable to go to that place at this time. Maybe you should go to rest now." Kinlawo looked out the window. He found that it was already dawn in the east, and it was daybreak. Even if it was not completely bright yet, it is obviously not a wise choice to want to summon this sinful soul at this time. "Then I'll leave first and come to bother you again at night," Kinlawo said and stood up directly. He didn't want to rest in the cemetery. Even if there was nothing to be afraid of, he would feel a little disgusted. There was no way. The dragon people still kept their distance from the dead and their bones. Only a few weirdos would do things like dancing on the grave. Kinlawo thought of his new brother at this time. He turned his head and looked at Johnny and asked, "By the way, Johnny, what are your plans? Do you want to go back to the city with me? I can take you there." "No, brother Kin, I won't bother. My girlfriend Luo-shan will come to bring me breakfast in a while." Johnny waved his hand with a happy smile on his face. "Virtue." Kinlawo rolled his eyes, jumped up directly, flew towards the horizon, and disappeared in the blink of an eye. "Johnny, have you really decided to stay with him? Although he is very powerful, power often represents a more terrible enemy. You know, the vastness and breadth of the universe is beyond our imagination, and there are countless powerful beings. Mephisto's power in the universe is just that." At this time, old Carter walked to Johnny and said earnestly, "Old Carter, I have thought about it. The future is too far away. With my strength, even if I reach your level, I can't seek revenge on Mephisto." Kinlawo said that in a month at the shortest and half a year at the longest, he will help me kill Mephisto. Johnny clenched his fists, and a gleam of hatred flashed in his eyes. "This is really an irresistible condition. It will take at most half a year? I didn't expect that one day I would be able to witness the death of Mephisto with my own eyes. It's really exciting." Old Carter looked at the rising sun, and in his old and turbid eyes, a hatred stronger than Johnny's flashed. Mephisto only made Johnny lose his father and temporarily his girlfriend. God knows how much Mephisto made old Carter lose. Family, friends, lovers, children. All the people related to old Carter disappeared completely under Mephisto's conspiracy. There is not even a chance to go to hell. There are many people in this world who hate Mephisto. Among these people, old Carter can definitely rank in the top 3. That kind of hatred is almost unforgettable. Old Carter is a person who can recognize himself, and he knows that he is definitely not Mephisto's opponent, so he has been waiting for someone who can kill Mephisto. It's a pity that he never waited for it. He was already desperate. It wasn't until Johnny showed up that he really saw hope, even though this hope was very slim. But who would have thought that today he heard the most pleasing news in hundreds of years? As for whether Kinlawo could kill Mephisto, old Carter thought he could. Apart from anything else, The evil power that appeared for a moment was not something Mephisto could contend with. It was more than 7 o'clock in the morning. Kinluo returned home. He found that May Parker was not resting, but chatting with Pepper. There were several bottles of Kinluo's stock in front of them. Looking at the empty bottles, it was obvious that the two had been drinking all night. "Hey, you're in a good mood. Why did Potts think of coming to my place? You don't have to accompany Tony." Kinluo took off his coat and asked with a smile. "You said that since that day, Tony has been going crazy with Ethan and completely sealed himself in the studio. He doesn't see anyone, and even I am not allowed to approach the studio except for preparing food." Chapter 325. If it were in the past, this kind of emotion would never happen to old Carter. But now it's no use. He's old, his strength is almost exhausted. With his remaining strength, he can only use a powerful move like the Eye of Judgment once or twice at most, then he can die quietly. He can hardly bear the consequences of the failure of the Eye of Judgment. Johnny looked at the two nervously, and at the same time, he couldn't help but be secretly curious. He really wanted to know what kind of scene it would be like for a powerful soul like Kinluo to face the burning of the Eye of Judgment. Old Carter sat directly opposite Kinluo. Flames gradually emerged from his eyes, and soon his eyes were burned clean by the flames, forming eye sockets on his skull. However, there was no change in other parts. This shows how much old Carter has controlled his own power. It is much stronger than Johnny, a half-baked Ghost Rider. Soon a vortex of flames appeared in the eye sockets. The rotation speed of the vortex of flames is not fast, but it contains a breathtaking power. Kinluo felt a powerful judgment force quietly appearing in his sea of consciousness, directly taking his soul. This spiritual power is very powerful. It is the same Eye of Judgment, but the user is different. This power is very different, even for Kinluo. It is probably not an easy task to resist Carter's Eye of Judgment. Johnny next to him felt the powerful power from his predecessor, and bursts of smoke began to emerge from his body. This is the induction of the two Ghost Riders. Such a powerful Eye of Judgment made Johnny feel pressure and a sense of gap. He didn't expect that he was so much worse than old Carter as a Ghost Rider. The gap between them is really like a firefly and a bright moon. As the power of old Carter's Eye of Judgment continued to invade, the Heart's Eye began to live like last time. But this time, the Heart's Eye was suppressed by Kinluo as soon as it moved. It became static again, and the power of the Eye of Judgment successfully entered his soul. Old Carter secretly breathed a sigh of relief at this time. He could also feel the reaction of the Heart's Eye just now. It is no exaggeration to say that when his heart moved, he even thought about where to bury himself. The power of the Eye of Judgment began to invade Kinluo's soul. Memories were constantly being drawn out, ready for judgment. Kinluo breathed a sigh of relief when he saw his memories being drawn out. They were all his memories of this world after he crossed over. The memories of the original world were not drawn out. It must be the system's credit. If old Carter saw the memories of his previous life, he would probably go crazy on the spot when he knew that his world was almost the Truman Show. In the comics, didn't Deadpool break the dimension and know that he was just a comic character? Since Deadpool himself was mentally abnormal, he barely accepted it. After Professor X explored Deadpool's memories, he collapsed on the spot. He turned into a madman directly. Kinluo didn't want old Carter to become a madman because he saw his memories of his previous life. Now, the last trace of worry in his heart has been removed. Completely let go of the spirit, just like watching an animation, watching the memories of his original body. At this time, old Carter has begun to doubt his life. He even seriously doubted that he had not cast the Eye of Judgment on Kinluo. What he saw now was completely an illusion created by Kinluo for him. How could such a powerful person be so mediocre in the first half of his life, let alone sin? There was not even a chance to sin. He lived alone after his parents died, and there was not even a record of harming small animals. He was just like a blank sheet of paper. The innocent picture kept flashing, from childhood to adulthood, as if watching a documentary, which seemed a bit boring. But soon the guilty memory was guided out. It was just that this sin made Kinluo a little unacceptable. It made old Carter want to hit the wall. In the sin picture, Kinluo was holding a thick test paper with a serious face and saying something. Chapter 144 Soul Enhancement. Another shot. Kinlawo's mouth twitched wildly, looking at the scene of himself being inhuman. What a joke. How can guiding children to study become a sin? This is for the future of the children. Okay. I forced him to use the Pretty Dragon double translation dictionary to translate the exercises. This is to exercise his language ability. Wouldn't it be nice to master one more language, and the history of Dragon Country and the like? They are all very important subjects. Okay! Kinlawo complained crazily in his heart. Soon, the scenes where he forced Peter to do the test paper were pulled out. It is no exaggeration to say that 99% of Kinlawo's sins came from Peter. As for the other sins, they were basically not big. The scenes where he killed monster villains almost flashed by. Kinlawo was not surprised by this. The judgment of the Ghost Rider was not blind. He could distinguish right from wrong, good from evil. Killing those villains would not increase his sins, but would eliminate some of his sins. For example, some accidental injuries, destruction of his property and other sins. However, Kinlawo did not accept Peter's sins. His was clearly the love from his elders. How could it be a sin? Kinlawo had nothing on his side. Old Carter was really going crazy. For the first time, he felt that there was something wrong with the Eye of Judgment. How could a person with such evil and powerful power only kill bad guys? The biggest sin is just to teach a child to learn? Don't be ridiculous. But the facts are in front of him. Even if old Carter doesn't believe it, there is nothing he can do, because the picture of Kinlawo's life has ended. Boom! The roar sounded in Kinlawo's mind. Then the pictures extracted by the power of judgment began to burn. The resentment from Peter and other strong emotions continued to hit Kinlawo's soul. But these emotions are just appetizers. The main thing is the burning of the fire of judgment. Waves of burning pain came from the depths of the soul. That feeling really made Kinlawo have the urge to hit his head against the wall. It was so painful. Just this little sin made Kinlawo, a person with extremely high soul strength, feel so painful. Think about what kind of pain those demons who are really sinful will endure. No wonder the Eye of Judgment is called a great terror and a great killer. Fortunately, Kinlawo's sins are not serious. So after the fire of judgment burned for a while, it dissipated cleanly. In an instant, Kinlawo felt as if he had ascended directly from hell to heaven. He was about to float. After being calcined by the fire of judgment, his soul became purer and more powerful. It was just like the marrow washing and bone cutting in martial arts novels. However, he experienced the soul version. It is no exaggeration to say that Kinlawo's soul strength has increased by nearly 1/5. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.